The news of this victory, he still chose to keep it a secret. He did not report it to Kyoto. The brilliant transparent gem was escorted all the way until it was sent to the laboratory. The military used a probe to detect the beetles for a long time, and after confirming that the beetles had disappeared, they promptly used drones to issue instructions to the public. All insects have been eliminated. Everyone can move freely. Drones flew through the streets and alleys, delivering this good news to many people. Those who were curled up indoors initially found it hard to believe this news, but as the drones flew overhead one after another, everyone finally reacted. The insect crisis was indeed over. A portion of people also witnessed the insects' demise firsthand. They were still fighting against the beetles at that time. The insects were fierce and charged at them wildly, looking terrifying. The number of insects was vast, while they had only 2 people. Just when it seemed they were about to become food for the insects, the beetles suddenly let out a series of horrific cries, and then they were engulfed in flames, turning into heaps of ash. The humans being pursued were stunned. This change was utterly unexpected, but undoubtedly, they survived the beetles' attack. The survivors were overwhelmed with joy. This good news quickly spread to the Lu family. At this time, Lu Dad and Lu Mom, along with the Wei family, Zhang family, and Wang family, all paused to listen to the good news from the drones. They looked on with vigilance, seemingly not fully believing it. Wang frowned. Is this real? It has only been a day. Is it really resolved? The Zhang family even pulled back the curtains to see if that beetle outside their window was still there. When he drew back the curtain, he found the outside was empty. It seems to be true. That beetle is gone. He murmured. Lu Dad and Lu Mom were thinking about their son. If the crisis really was over, then why hadn't their son come back? Could something have happened? The couple was extremely worried. At this moment, Lu Zhou was hiding in a secluded place, beginning to heal his wounds. He drank several bottles of recovery drinks produced by the game and ate several items that restored both energy and health. As he looked at his bloodied back, it gradually began to heal after consuming the food. When his back was healing, it brought an unbearable itch. Lu Zhou resisted the urge to scratch and gritted his teeth to endure. Feng Ji, looking at his back, couldn't help but sigh. Even if your back heals with medicine, there will be scars left behind. These scars might expose your identity, so you better protect yourself well. Lu Zhou, enduring the discomfort, said softly, I know. Do you have any disguises to cover my back? Feng Ji began to rummage through his database and then said slowly, I have mask. Do you want to use it? It can disguise fabric as your skin, making your injuries invisible to everyone. However, it requires energy to exchange. Chapter 506, Revelation. Lu Zhou didn't hesitate at all. This one will do. Feng Ji nodded slightly, and then began to leisurely camouflage Lu Zhou's back. Remember to take it off every time you shower. When it gets wet, its effectiveness weakens. Lu Zhou responded with a soft Once Feng Ji finished treating his wounds, Lu Zhou immediately got up, intending to go home first. If it weren't for treating his wounds, he would have returned to the first opportunity. However, he forcefully suppressed that thought. He didn't want his parents to see the horrific scars on his back and worry needlessly. Now, everything was fine. Lu Zhou stood up and realized that the wounds no longer affected his movements. He quickly used shadow travel and arrived at his doorstep. Lu Dad and Lu Mom were anxious, but they had to maintain a calm exterior. Especially Lu Mom, who anxiously glanced at the tall building frequently. It's not far. Why is my son not back yet? At that moment, Wei Qingzhu's phone rang first. It was a call from a researcher. Professor Wei, Director Song would like you to come to the lab. There are some matters that require your assistance. Wei Qingzhu chatted a bit with the other party, who then confirmed that a car was on its way to pick her up. Just then, the door quietly opened. Lu Zhou was back. Lu Dad's gaze was fixed on the door, and the moment Lu Zhou appeared, he was the first to notice. He immediately walked over excitedly, but he couldn't say a word. Lu Mom noticed second and hurried over as well. Seeing Lu Zhou standing there safely, Lu Mom's previously anxious heart instantly calmed down. Her eyes welled with tears as she tightly hugged Lu Zhou, silently crying. Lu Zhou stiffly returned the hug, unsure of where to place his hands. However, Lu Mom's arms were pressing against his back. The wounds on his back, which had just healed, tore open a bit again at that moment. Lu Zhou seemed to smell a faint trace of blood. Wait, Lu Mom furrowed her brows. That smell of blood, are you hurt? She immediately released Lu Zhou and began to check him up and down. Lu Zhou's expression tightened as he quietly explained, No, it's just someone else's blood. Lu Mom ignored Lu Zhou's explanation, but after a careful inspection, she indeed found no wounds on him and had to give up. Lu Dad was so overwhelmed with excitement that he didn't know what to say, only repeatedly murmuring, It's good that you're back, good that you're back. You should rest a bit. Your uncle plans to go to the lab. Hearing this, Lu Zhou was suddenly no longer tired. The blood-soaked back seemed to hurt less. He couldn't miss the chance to see how to make the beetles acid up close. Really? I want to go see too. Lu Zhou's request was met with no objections from Lu Dad and Lu Mom. After all, in their eyes, following Wei Qingzhu to the lab was much safer than what Lu Zhou had done before. Lu Mom smiled and tapped Lu Zhou's forehead. You just can't sit still, can you? Fine, go ahead. I'll cook your favorite dishes at home, but remember to come back early. Lu Dad also supported the decision. At that moment, Zhang Jiajiao also came over. He was curious about where Lu Zhou had been before, but seeing that Lu Zhou seemed unwilling to say much, he didn't dare to pry further. After all, everyone has their own secrets, and he wasn't keen on having people inquire about his sixth sense either. Upon learning that Lu Zhou planned to follow Wei Qingzhu, Zhang Jiahao's eyes lit up, and he immediately became enthusiastic. I want to go too. I want to see what this is all about. Lu Zhou smiled broadly. Sure, let's go together. The two of them linked arms and approached Wei Qingzhu, who was busy packing things up. He was also worried about Lu Zhou, but this was a task he could not refuse. Jiang Xiaolin was anxious, her eyes red from worry for Lu Zhou. Thinking about where her nephew might be at that moment made her heart ache like being cut with a dull knife. At that moment, she heard a familiar voice. Uncle, take us with you. Is that Xiao Zhou? Jiang Xiaolin immediately looked up, and Lu Zhou's smiling face appeared before her. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled. Wei Qingzhu also breathed a sigh of relief. Her nephew had too many secrets. He could not stop him from doing what he believed was worth fighting for, so he could only silently pray and encourage Lu Zhou from behind. Jiang Xiaolin did not dare to ask too much, but her reddened eyes revealed her deep concern. She discreetly wiped her tears. Xiao Zhou, you two take good care of your uncle and come back here. It will make you something delicious. Lu Zhou grinned. All right, I'm looking forward to it. Zhang Jiahao quickly added sweetly. And Jiang, I want some too. Jiang Xiaolin chuckled. Sure, you two come back early. Wei Tongtong ran over to Lu Zhou's side and cuddled him, acting spoiled. Brother, come home early. I'll wait for you. Lu Zhou felt a sweetness bubbling up in his heart. He patted his sister's little head. Okay, I promise you, brother will come back early. Suddenly, Lu Zhou felt incredibly happy. So many people were worried about him. So many were waiting for him. It was unlike the previous generation when he felt lonely, like floating duckweed, with no one waiting for him, no one caring, and even living began to feel boring. The military vehicle arrived quickly. In less than 10 minutes, the car was already waiting outside the door. Wang De was still with his wife at this moment, unaware that Lu Zhou had left in the meantime. He didn't know that the three of them were about to leave. He was planning to find Grandma Shan to see how he could help his wife terminate this pregnancy without pain. But things did not go as he hoped. He and Yin firmly disagreed. Don't go, I want this child. His wife, pale and weak, spoke with a voice barely above a whisper, and her words made Wang Da's heart ache as if it were being cut. His eyes turned red, his body trembling, almost on the verge of kneeling down. Yin, I don't want it. If it costs your health, then I would rather not have it. I'm begging you. Even if we don't have children in the future, we can still live well together, can't we? Wang De was in immense pain. He truly regretted being soft-hearted and agreeing to his wife's idea of having a child. The memories of supporting each other in the past flashed through his mind, and he felt he could not accept the thought of Yin becoming extremely fragile. He did not want to see his wife fall into such a state. Yin looked tired but stubbornly refused to relent. Wangda was so anxious that tears streamed down his face. He did not understand why his wife was so insistent, even if the child's birth came at the expense of her health. Yin, I beg you, please tell me why you want to do this. Seeing her husband in despair and on the verge of collapse, Yin finally spoke through tear-filled eyes, revealing her true thoughts. Chapter 507, Independent Self. Yin struggled to sit up, her expression weary as she said, Wangda, I just feel that for the rest of our lives, we need a child to have something to look forward to. Otherwise, I think our parents will definitely feel regret, and can we really maintain our current relationship in the future? Wangda was taken aback, then furrowed his brows tightly. Who told you this, Yin? Our feelings for each other won't be influenced by anything external. Besides, we have plenty of time and opportunities to explore different lives. How can we possibly not have something to look forward to? Wangda didn't dare to raise his voice with his wife, only able to comfort her in a low tone. He wasn't sure if it was the pregnancy hormones causing her to become so sensitive and suspicious. He could only speak softly, try to reason with her. Yin was agitated. After saying a couple of things, she closed her eyes in anger, her lips moving up and down. I don't care. This child is ours, and I won't allow it to be aborted. Wangda was frantic. Just then, his supervisor called to express concern. Although Wangda was anxious, he didn't speak carelessly. He could only force a smile and chatted with his supervisor for a few moments. At the end of the call, the supervisor informed Wang that the hospital had launched a new baby gene screening service to check if the child was healthy. Wangda hurriedly thanked the supervisor, and once the call ended, he felt uneasy and ultimately decided to take his wife to see a doctor. No matter what, at least this child must be healthy. Otherwise, what's the point of giving birth? Thinking this, Wangda hurriedly said several comforting words to his wife. However, when he mentioned going for a checkup, Yin was somewhat resistant. I don't want to go. Wangda frowned. He noticed that his wife had changed completely after becoming pregnant. With the intention of being considerate, he patiently coaxed her and finally managed to get her to the checkup department. After getting her blood drawn, they sat outside waiting for the results. 2 hours later, the results came out. The outdoor temperature had dropped to -10 degrees, and Wangda was worried his wife would feel cold. So he draped a thick cotton jacket he had brought over her. Yin, feeling a bit sleepy, leaned against Wangda and fell asleep. After 2 hours, Wangda held the test results in his hand, somewhat at a loss. The child has a problem. It is a hyper-male gene child. Wangda felt a mix of relief and concern for his wife. It should be due to radiation exposure, which greatly increases the chances of having a deformed child. Now that there was a problem with the child, Wangda thought he might be able to persuade his wife to terminate the pregnancy. However, Yin was unwilling, her eyes filled with tears, insisting that she wanted to give birth to this child no matter what. Wangda was so infuriated that he felt pain in his chest. After thinking for a moment, he realized that a child with hypermale syndrome would automatically implant a suggestion in the mother's mind, making it hard for her to bear the thought of aborting the child. Hypermale syndrome is inherently a bad seed. Wangda certainly could not allow such a child to be born. Moreover, he was concerned about his wife's health as well. He was very stubborn, ignoring Yin's objections, and dragged her into the medical room. As soon as they entered, they coincidentally ran into Aunt Lu, who had come to pick up medicine. Aunt Lu had only been away from her post for a little over an hour. Because the hospital couldn't afford to have too few staff, the medical workers were quickly replaced. Once everyone was back, they resumed their work. At that moment, Aunt Lu saw the angry Wangda and the red-eyed, crying Yin, and she was puzzled. After Wangda explained the situation, Aunt Lu's expression showed some understanding. You did the right thing. It's unnecessary for such a malformed child to be born. He Yin Yin is currently affected by hormones, so she may not listen to you. However, in the long run, it's better not to have this child, she said. Wangda nodded, his tone filled with helplessness. It's all my fault. After He Yin Yin recovers her health this time, I will never agree to have children again. Aunt Lu was no longer someone with old-fashioned ideas. She had already realized that having a child could indeed bring a lot of suffering. Moreover, considering He Yin Yin's special situation, she naturally had to advise her to terminate the pregnancy. He Yin Yin's reluctance was understandably difficult to ease, and Wangda was unable to communicate with his wife. Every time he spoke to her, He Yin Yin would break down in tears. In the end, the task of comforting He Yin Yin was handed over to Aunt Lu. Aunt Lu gently took her hand and had her sit down on a stool to rest for a while. She wasted no time, giving He Yin Yin examples and informing her about the pains of childbirth. She also mentioned that raising such a child would be very challenging, with a high likelihood of criminal behavior. Gradually, He Yin Yin's resistance began to fade. Feeling a bit dazed and lost, He Yin Yin finally felt a glimmer of rationality return as Aunt Lu seized the opportunity to advise her again. He Yin Yin, you're still young. You shouldn't be trapped for a lifetime by this child that came about by mistake. Besides, didn't Wangda say that having this child would only worsen your health? Just think about it. If you have this child but can't raise him yourself, you might become a burden to your family. Just think about what I said, is it right? As she spoke about this, He Yin Yin's rationality returned a bit. She couldn't help but think of her past self, youthful and healthy. Even when the apocalypse arrived, she had always prided herself on never faltering in that world. Thinking back to the scene of fighting the beetle, she had initially been at an advantage, but later, due to severe stomach pain, she lost her ability to fight and became a burden to her family. With that thought, her affection for the child diminished somewhat. Aunt Lu continued to advise her. The conditions aren't mature yet. If you give birth, you'll suffer, and you won't even have the money to recover. I spent several thousand on pelvic floor repair back then. I doubt they even have that service in obstetrics anymore. Most likely, they'll just guide you through a few movements and have you practice on your own. The more He Yin Yin listened, the more a sense of inexplicable fear emerged from the bottom of her heart. She didn't want that, becoming completely useless for the sake of the child. Aunt Lu spoke a lot, and in the end, He Yin Yin softly replied, "Thank you. I'll think about it some more." In her heart, she had already made a choice, but she was still conflicted and unsure whether to follow through with it. After Aunt Lu left, not long after, He Yin Yin received a message from an unknown number on her phone. Do what you want to do. You must first be yourself, and only then can you be a mother, wife, or daughter. I didn't save you from there to let you continue living in suffering. Chapter 508, Trial Success. It was just 2 very brief sentences, but He Yin Yin couldn't help but shed tears. She made up her mind. No matter what, she would prioritize being herself. Afterward, He Yin Yin called Wangda in and explained that she had come to terms with her situation. Wangda felt a surge of joy in his heart and was even more grateful to Aunt Lu. However, he knew that the most important thing was to secure the surgery before his wife changed her mind. Wangda took his wife to the gynecology clinic. Initially, the doctor was somewhat reluctant about their idea of abortion, but upon seeing the diagnosis of hypermasculine syndrome on the form, he immediately changed his mind. In this current environment, it was still best to prioritize healthy births. The doctor first scheduled several tests for He Yin Yin and, after confirming the gestational period, handed Wangda some medication. Your wife is still in the early stages of pregnancy, so just taking this medication is fine. To prevent any dangers, you should get a hospital bed in the inpatient department, and after 2 days, you can return home. Wangda repeatedly thanked the doctor, and as He Yin Yin walked out, she felt her steps becoming lighter. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou was looking at a text message on his phone and finally smiled. The other party had sent a simple message. "Thank you, I will be myself." How did Lu Zhou know? It was Aunt Lu who had called him and informed him that He Yin Yin's child had hypermasculine syndrome. Aunt Lu was somewhat worried, saying, "This child is too stubborn. A malformed child should not be kept." Plus, I see that Yin Yin has lost a lot of weight these past few days. She must be suffering because of the child. From this, Lu Zhou learned about Yin Yin's situation. After thinking it over for a long time, he decided to send her a couple of texts, hoping she could view the situation more rationally. After receiving Yin Yin's reply, Lu Zhou still felt uneasy and called Wang De. Through their conversation, he found out that the couple had already arranged for the surgery and were planning to take the medication. Although the child would be lost, Lu Zhou could tell that their relationship was still strong. After hanging up the phone, Feng Zhi shook his head and said, "Tisk, that's more like it. In this environment, who would want to have a baby? I certainly wouldn't." Lu Zhou remained silent, seemingly agreeing with Feng Zhi's words. Feng Zhi's expression gradually turned serious. "Isn't your meeting taking too long?" 2 hours earlier, Lu Zhou, his uncle, and Zhang Jiahao had been taken by military personnel to the laboratory, expecting to quickly begin their experiments. However, to their surprise, several experts had proposed differing opinions on the method of handling the gemstone. As a result, the progress of the matter was temporarily stalled. Some experts suggested cutting a piece of the gemstone for research, while others vehemently opposed this, insisting that the gemstone must remain intact. Wei Qingzhu had been silent throughout, quietly observing the experts as they attacked each other's viewpoints and proposed some rather outrageous ideas. Lu Zhou felt like cursing in his heart. What the hell? He had clearly explained the correct methods to the military before. Why were these people still arguing? Moreover, it was essential that the gemstone remain intact. There was no question about it. Lu Zhou's expression changed several times, his face darkening. On the side, Zhang Jiahao listened dumbfounded as these people passionately expressed their opinions, utterly at a loss. At last, Song Wei could no longer bear it and coughed softly a few times. "Everyone, please be quiet for a moment. This project is under Professor Wei's responsibility, so I suggest we listen to what Professor Wei has to say first." Song Wei's gaze swept over Wei Qingzhu's face before he spoke faintly. Wei Qingzhu remained calm and composed. His voice was low but steady. "What we think is not important. What matters most is how that mysterious person at the time thought, right? When the gemstone was in the hands of our military, we have no idea what the mysterious person said." Wei Qingzhu's gaze fixed on Song Wei not far away. Song Wei remained silent, seemingly recalling certain events. Finally, he gritted his teeth and slowly spoke. "That mysterious person said that the gemstone just needs to be immersed in water to produce an acidic solution." Wei Qingzhu's eyes deepened. "Then let's do it this way. Since the other party helped us obtain the gemstone, there's no need for them to hide anything from us on this matter." Although some others had opinions at that moment, no one dared to speak. They quietly watched Song Wei, wanting to know what he thought. Song Wei unconsciously tapped his fingers on the screen before saying, "Professor Wei, let's try it your way." The others immediately fell silent, not daring to say anything. Lu Zhou let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his uncle had significant power. Otherwise, even if he had personally brought the gemstone, the other party might not comply with what he said. Soon, the laboratory was filled with several people. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Wei Qingzhu, wearing laboratory gloves, carefully placed the gemstone into a specially made water tank. After placing the gemstone, water began to be slowly poured in. About a third of the water had been added when, under everyone's gaze, the originally clear water had turned into a murky yellow solution. Lu Zhou took out a test strip and handed it to his uncle. Wei Qingzhu carefully held the test strip in his hand and then dipped it into the solution. Since the test strip was specially made, there was no scene of the strip dissolving. As soon as Wei Qingzhu immersed the test strip, it instantly changed to the color representing the highest acidity. Everyone's eyes lit up. Did this experiment really succeed? It was truly incredible. Just by immersing the gemstone in water, it could continuously produce an acidic solution. Many were silently amazed at how marvelous it was, and immediately someone applied to ask Song Wei for permission to cut off a small piece for experiments. This person was not Chinese, he was a foreigner. Given the significance of this gemstone, Song Wei certainly could not casually allow anyone to take a knife to it, so he immediately refused. The other party looked somewhat confused and wanted to say something, but was promptly escorted out by someone beside Song Wei. Then, Song Wei sternly stated, "This gemstone is currently only allowed to be used to produce acidic solutions. Any thoughts about cutting the gemstone should not even be entertained. We urgently need acidic solutions for military purposes. So, I ask all the scientists to understand that we cannot gamble humanity's hopes for our own curiosity." At this point, anyone with a bit of sense understood Song Wei's meaning. Those with small ideas dared not speak up anymore. Subsequently, Song Wei looked at Wei Qingzhu and continued, "Professor Wei, I'll leave the experiment in your capable hands." Chapter 509. The Meaning of Happiness. Wei Qingzhu nodded with understanding. Beside him, Zhang Jiehui still hadn't figured out what was going on. Turning his head, he noticed that these people had reached a strange consensus. Lu Zhou, on the other hand, had anticipated this. When he took out the gem, he already guessed that this project would ultimately be led by his aunt. After all, the initial researcher for this project was Wei Qingzhu, and given that he was highly regarded, it was predictable that, barring any unusual interference, this decision could be foreseen. Once the tasks were assigned, Song Wei hurriedly took a group of people and left the laboratory. The direction they headed in was precisely toward the Weapons Research Institute. As they were leaving, a secretary under Song Wei specifically took some solutions to aid the other party's research. As soon as they left, the crowd immediately became much quieter. Most of these people had gathered by the pool, watching the gem continuously release acidic solutions. It's amazing, this gem looks small, but how is it able to continuously release acidic solutions? I wonder if it has altered the water's molecular composition. While these scientists were discussing, a team fully equipped with weapons walked in. The crowd was momentarily stunned, and the leading soldier spoke up. "Researchers, our superiors have instructed us to escort the gem to the safest location." Wei Qingzhu stood to the side and gestured for the soldiers to take the gem. Then he said, "We must first set up an acidic water circulation system. This way, we can ensure the safety of the gem." Wei Qingzhu's meaning was clear. With this system, the water produced by the gem could be sent anywhere, so the gem's physical location would no longer be of concern. The leading soldier respectfully bowed to Wei Qingzhu and then led a team of people to leave quickly. Lu Zhou watched their figures without saying a word. Since the laboratory temporarily had a water circulation system, it didn't take much effort to complete a small-scale water circulation system. Wei Qingzhu was in charge of this project. Although currently no one was allowed to touch the gem, the material science team had recently been busy making pipes to expand the scale of the water circulation. Once things were on track, Lu Zhou, Zhang Jiehui, and Wei Qingzhu led a team and were busy all afternoon, finally able to head home. To ensure their safety, they were personally escorted home by the military. Lu Zhou was truly exhausted. After getting home, the first thing he did was to sleep thoroughly. After resting for 2 days, he finally regained his composure. The large wound on his back had also healed quite a bit by this time. During the quiet period, Feng Zhi would occasionally urge Lu Zhou to complete some daily tasks, fearing that her plan to collect spaceships would be indefinitely prolonged. In these few days, He Yinyan had returned from the hospital, and when she came back, she looked haggard. Lu Zhou's family even specially brought some supplements to visit her. Grandma Shan also went. Her expression was strange, making it hard to tell whether she was happy or sad. She just solemnly placed numerous supplements for her and instructed He Yinyan to take her medicine on time. Wangda was the one who understood his wife the best. He observed that ever since she was discharged from the hospital, her temper had improved significantly. Could it be that the superhuman genes are so powerful? Could they even significantly influence a pregnant woman's emotions and thoughts in just 3 months? In a state of shock, Wangda felt both pain for his wife and relieved that she seemed to have come to terms with everything. During his wife's hospitalization, Wanda learned about the sterilization procedure and realized that the physical harm it caused was far less than what women experienced after undergoing sterilization. He decisively scheduled the surgery for a week later. In fact, very few people were opting for this procedure nowadays, largely due to the need for fresh bloodlines in the underground city, and not many considered sterilization. Moreover, hospitals had quotas and could not allow too many people to undergo the procedure. However, the current quotas were far from sufficient, so the staff responsible for registrations merely asked a couple of questions before letting Wanda wait. At this point, He Yin was still unaware of all this. Once He Yin's condition improved enough for her to be alone, Wanda asked his parents to care for her while he went to the hospital alone. He left early in the morning and returned late at night. In the meantime, He Yin called him several times, but Wanda didn't answer, which made her worry. When Wanda finally returned home, He Yin got up and looked at her husband, filled with deep concern. "Where have you been? Why didn't you answer your phone?" Wanda's eyes sparkled, which was likely a result of the surgery. Due to the frequent time spent together, he knew he couldn't hide it from her and had to be completely honest. As he spoke, He Yin listened, stunned. When she learned that her husband chose to undergo sterilization to spare her the pain, all her pent-up frustration and gloom dissipated in an instant. She felt heartache for her husband and was moved that he would make such a sacrifice for her. She couldn't help but think about how many people would be unwilling to do this. As she listened, her eyes turned red. Wanda, sensing what his wife wanted to say, smiled and feigned lightheartedness. "Don't worry about me. This is a very minor surgery, and the physical harm is minimal. It's definitely better than you suffering." He Yin felt a warmth in her heart. She had repeatedly thought that she hadn't made a mistake in choosing him. The hardships she had endured in the past reassured her that her husband had never let her suffer for nothing. They exchanged silent glances before finally embracing tightly. As for Wanda's parents, he informed them first. They were understanding and expressed that they respected the couple's decision and would not interfere. For the first time, the huge burden in He Yin's heart felt like it had been lifted. When this news reached Lu Zhou's ears, it was already a month later. Upon hearing it, Lu Zhou was momentarily shocked. After all, it was quite rare for a husband to make such a sacrifice for his wife. But Wanda was capable of that. Lu Zhou increasingly felt that Wanda was indeed a genuinely good person. Having known him for so long, Lu Zhou was completely sure that Wanda was an impeccable partner in terms of character, personality, and how he handled matters. During this time, Lu Zhou would often see Wang, taking He Yin out for a stroll, simply to relax. Sometimes, when he finished work, he'd catch sight of the couple walking hand in hand, chatting quietly, their demeanor calm and warm. When they encountered Lu Zhou, they always invited him over for a visit and casually suggested having a meal together. Chapter 510, Blame. At the beginning, Lu Zhou went to visit. He wanted to see how He Yin's recovery was progressing. Once he entered Wanda's house, he found that Wanda was truly a model husband. Cooking, washing dishes, doing laundry, sweeping, and mopping. Basically, whatever housework could be seen, he was doing it. He Yin did not boss him around. Rather, Wanda thought that his wife had suffered twice for him, so he didn't want her to worry about these chores. After finishing a steaming hot meal, Lu Zhou couldn't help but marvel at how rare it was to find such a devoted husband like Wanda. During the meal, Lu Zhou asked about He Yin's health to ensure she was fine, and then he put down the supplements he brought, indicating for her to take them. Not long after Lu Zhou returned home, both Lu Dad and Lu Mom learned about the things Wanda was doing for He Yin. When this was mentioned, Lu Mom frowned and said, "Yin is fortunate to have someone who cares about her. I just didn't have that luck." This prompted Lu Dad to quickly smooth things over with a laugh. "Honey, what you're saying, I love to hear. Look, don't we have chores I do too?" Lu Mom crossed her arms and snorted. "You cook, but all the other chores are done by me. Am I not tired?" Realizing his mistake, Lu Dad hurriedly slipped into the kitchen to tidy up. Not to mention Lu Dad, even Lu Zhou felt the heat from Lu Mom. "Son, you should help your mom with some chores too. She also wants to enjoy the happiness Yin has." Since Lu Mom said so, Lu Zhou naturally complied. From then on, cooking and washing dishes was handled by Lu Dad, while sweeping, mopping, and laundry were done by Lu Zhou, and Lu Mom enjoyed her hard-earned leisure time. To be honest, Lu Zhou quite liked it this way. He didn't have to worry too much about himself or the family. The most important thing was that she was living happily. Lu Dad was also quite calm and didn't seem bothered by doing housework. Occasionally, Lu Zhou would ask him how he felt about it. Lu Dad sighed. In the past, I was busy with work and neglected your mom. She's practically a little expert at home, handling everything. Now that my work is easier, I naturally can't let her be so tired. Actually, I have to thank Wang De. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't know a man could do this much for his wife. Comparing myself to him, I feel like I'm really falling short. Lu Zhou smiled. Not at all. I think you're great too, Dad. The father and son were talking, unaware that Lu Mom was outside, listening with tears streaming down her face. After overhearing a few sentences, she hurriedly tiptoed back into the bedroom. She often pondered what kind of luck she had to have such a wonderful family. Grateful for her family, and also for her son's mysterious superpower. Without them, how could the whole family be so comfortable? Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half a year had gone by. During this period, the weapons department had successfully researched the best use of acidic solutions, and they had already manufactured test weapons. Today was the day for testing these weapons. Moreover, the submarine department had already produced 10 submarines last week. However, these submarines were still not enough, and more needed to be manufactured. As for the aerospace project, the scientists had already locked onto their target and were continuously monitoring the movements of the sun surveillance device, ensuring that once they reached space, they could hit it in the first second. Additionally, the aerospace department has manufactured 10 warships, which are capable of flying to designated locations and later being equipped with newly developed weapons from the weapons department. There is a 70% probability that they can destroy the surveillance system. The aerospace department's flying vehicles have already been tested, and everything is operating smoothly. The only reason the aerospace program is currently on hold is that the weapons still need further improvement. Song Wei has requested that the success rate for destroying the sun surveillance system must exceed 90%. Otherwise, it's just a case of alerting the enemy without any real effect. During this period, Lu Zhou has felt extremely busy. There's been an overwhelming amount of acidic solution produced. The weapons department has developed corrosive bombs, and after testing, the effects are particularly good. Because of this, the production of the acidic solution cannot afford to stop for even a moment. However, what's strange is that despite the small size of that gemstone, when it is activated, it can produce such a large amount of acidic solution. The circulating water has never stopped. Essentially, as soon as new water is put into the system, it transforms into acidic solution within seconds and is then continuously expelled. The personnel in the weapons manufacturing department, apart from making these things into bombs, are also widely applying them in various construction industries. This is particularly beneficial. However, the most important project remains the manufacture of acidic bombs, not just to destroy the sun, but also to prepare for the upcoming attack on the creatures within the time rift. During this time, Lu Zhou has not been idle. Besides doing some of his regular work, he has also drawn several new types of weapons in the game. These weapons are mostly blueprints and are of extremely high lethality. When Fengji looked at these weapons, he was quite satisfied. Not bad, not bad. Your luck is quite good. The things you've drawn are very useful. Look at this electromagnetic cannon. This thing is a large-scale destructive weapon on our planet. Also, you have blueprints for laser cannons. These are all good things. TSK. I wonder if these weapons will give the creatures a hard time once they're equipped. Fengji had a somewhat mischievous thought. Lu Zhou carefully looked through the blueprints, and then sent them all to Song Wei, along with the identity of the mysterious alien. As the beep, beep, beep notification sounded, Song Wei immediately opened to check the messages sent by the other party. During this time, he had basically come to trust this mysterious alien completely. The other party had never done anything detrimental to them. Looking at the blueprints sent by the other party, Song Wei felt his heart skip a beat. Can these weapons really be manufactured? Song Wei was not a weapons specialist. He didn't know, but his subordinates, the engineers, understood very well. Before long, he summoned the weapons engineers to his side. Can you take a look at whether these things can be realized? Song Wei's tone was urgent. He knew that if these weapons could indeed be realized, humanity's odds of victory would increase significantly. When the weapons engineers were called over, they felt somewhat apprehensive. What's the situation? Is it still because of the issues from the previous project? At that time, their project team had proposed a hypothesis, but because the realization was too difficult, they had to give up. To secure investment, their team had painted a rosy picture for Song Wei, but after realizing how hard it was to achieve, Song Wei had not given them a good face for at least a week. Chapter 511. Doubts in Kyoto. Let's hope Song Ji-dao isn't bringing up old issues again. After trudging into Song Wei's office, instead of facing Song Wei's questioning, I was met with a stack of draft papers. As a weapons researcher, I took them, and before I could examine them closely, I heard Song Wei's anxious voice. Take a look at these plans. Do you think they are feasible? If so, how high is the manufacturing difficulty? Since he didn't understand these matters, he had to rely on the people around him to take charge. I, as a weapons engineer, immediately opened the draft papers. After carefully looking through them, I felt dizzy. My God, where on earth did these drafts come from? A total of 7 high-tech weapons were presented. From the perspective of current human technology, about 5 could be manufactured, while the remaining 2 had to be abandoned due to the high difficulty of manufacturing technology. The more I looked, the more I felt that the person who came up with these technologies had astonishing skills and innovative capabilities. The more I looked, the more captivated I became. It wasn't until Song Wei softly called out to me that I came back to my senses. Professor Zhang, what do you think? I immediately pinched my arm to wake myself up and looked up excitedly. Song Ji-dao, 5 of these plans can be manufactured. Personally, I believe that the remaining 2 could also be realized in a not-so-distant future. But considering our recent timeline, it would be better to prioritize the manufacturing of the other 5 weapons that are easier to handle. After hearing Professor Zhang's report, the nervous heart of Song Wei finally relaxed a little. He breathed a sigh of relief and slowly exhaled. Great. Previously, there were insufficient reserves of weapons, making it impossible to enter space to destroy this sun surveillance system. Now it seems that if we can manufacture these weapons, our chances of success will increase significantly. Thinking of this, Song Wei immediately instructed his secretary to have the calculation team start working on it right away. I, Professor Zhang, then received a new task issued by Song Wei. Professor Zhang, these design plans are handed over to you. Can you lead the team to produce a finished product as soon as possible? Still immersed in the joy of receiving these design diagrams, I took a moment to process what Song Wei had said. Once I realized what he meant, I was first delighted, but then my brows furrowed. Seeing the difficulty on my face, Song Wei immediately asked, "What's wrong, Professor Zhang? Do you see any problems?" Coughing a few times, I slowly replied, Song Ji-dao, this task requires many researchers to participate. With the current number of people under me, it's far from enough, so..." The meaning was very clear. I hoped that Song Wei could provide me with more available manpower. Without any hesitation, Song Wei responded, "You could deploy all the personnel from your weapons group." After hearing this from Song Wei, my worried heart finally eased a bit. I respectfully bowed to Song Wei and then left the office. Song Wei himself then hurriedly resumed contact with the mysterious aliens. In any case, the other party did provide weapons and was friendly towards Blue Star. Song Wei sincerely thanked him, and soon after, Lu Zhou received the news. When he saw Song Wei's message of thanks, Lu Zhou couldn't help but smile slightly. It's good. At least he can help the country and improve Blue Star's chances of winning. Lu Zhou was only distracted for a moment before he continued to immerse himself in the research at hand. Time flew by, and after half a month, the weapons that Song Wei had taken from Lu Zhou had all been manufactured, and there were quite a few of them. Of course, The experts responsible for researching these weapons had all completed their work behind the door, otherwise half a month would have been far from enough. When the good news reached Lu Zhou's ears, he remained calm and didn't react with surprise like others did. Naturally, he was pleased, but he had already learned about this news in advance in the game cabin, so it didn't particularly surprise him. Wei Qingzhu occasionally checked in on Lu Zhou's game cabin, so he was aware of the developments in the weapons department. Honestly, Wei Qingzhu was quite surprised by the success of Professor Zhang and the others. Regardless of whether they had obtained the design blueprints, turning the blueprints into tangible products required advanced skills, not to mention the fact that their team worked rather quickly. Soon, when this good news arrived, everyone's first reaction was to congratulate Professor Zhang. Lu Zhou had met Professor Zhang before, and during these past few days, Professor Zhang seemed to be in high spirits. After a moment of surprise, Wei Qingzhu continued to focus on his own project and did not let himself be distracted by these events. As Lu Zhou marveled at how calm Wei Qingzhu was, news came from the Central Command that the first operation to destroy the sun was temporarily set for a week later. Moreover, crazily enough, Song Wei actually planned to live-stream the event for the public to see. Of course, his proposal was quickly suppressed by the forces in the central government. The higher-ups firmly rejected Song Wei's suggestion, stating that letting ordinary people know about this would only cause unnecessary panic. After being rejected, Song Wei was not angry. Instead, he calmly instructed his subordinates to act according to the central government's orders. The central government had already become somewhat wary of Song Wei's power. After all, in this underground city, all the military forces and manpower were under Song Wei's control. Additionally, there was the miraculous door that could control the flow of time, along with numerous top scientists gathered in this place. The forces from the capital had their sights set on entering the Liangshan underground city for the first time. At that time, Liangshan, as an underground city, was not considered the best area. Among all the underground cities in the country, the capital's underground city started construction the earliest and had the most complete facilities, with the best environment inside. The capital underground city was filled with wealthy people, second-generation elites, and bigwigs from the gray and black industries, all of whom mingled in the capital, continuing to act as if they were above everyone else. When the underground city was being constructed, almost all resources had to be tightly controlled by the capital. This caused a lot of dissatisfaction among residents from other regions, but in the end, there was no response to their grievances. Now, the restless forces from the capital had set their sights on the Liangshan underground city under Song Wei's rule. These second-generation elites had spontaneously formed a team to head to the Liangshan underground city, intending to see for themselves the development of the Liangshan underground city and how they planned to destroy the sun. Once they made up their minds, these people acted quickly, packing their things and greeting Song Wei before heading over. The journey from the capital underground city to Liangshan by underground train took a day and a night, so it was not a short distance. However, this group of people was eager to get a good understanding of the Liangshan underground city and was determined to come and see for themselves. Chapter 512, Display of Authority. When Song Wei learned this news, the group of second-generation elites had already set off on their journey. Under normal circumstances, Song Wei would have engaged in some verbal sparring to prevent them from coming over. After all, their arrival was a significant hassle. It was better to eliminate the problem in its infancy. However, since they were already on the way, he decided not to continue refusing them. Song Wei was determined not to let these people disrupt his plans. He then instructed his secretary a few things, telling him that when the people from Kyoto arrived, he should take them to tour the less central areas. The secretary, a trusted aide of Song Wei, nodded in agreement. Still feeling a bit uneasy, Song Wei continued to emphasize, "If I'm not available to deal with him later, you should go find Minister Zhai. I will delegate some of my authority to him." The secretary nodded again. Feeling somewhat reassured, Song Wei relaxed a bit. The news of the arrival of the Kyoto delegates was largely unknown to regular employees, except for the heads of various projects. When Wei Qingzhu learned the news, The other project heads also found out one after another. These individuals all had serious expressions. Lu Zhou and Zhang Jiashu were nearby and had also heard the news. Wei Qingzhu and the others were a bit far from them, and often they couldn't hear what was being discussed. Feeling bored, Zhang Jiashu leaned closer to his friend and whispered, "Lu Zhou, what do you think the people from Kyoto want to do when they arrive?" Lu Zhou frowned slightly. "I'm not sure. Maybe they want to see how we're going to blow up the sun?" This reasoning was indeed plausible, and Zhang Jiashu found it quite reasonable. In fact, many people were unaware that Kyoto had long since developed dissatisfaction with Song Wei and intended to use this opportunity to find fault with him. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, the Kyoto delegation had arrived. To show respect, Song Wei went personally to welcome them when he had the time. Wei Qingzhu also went, allowing Lu Zhou and Zhang Jiashu the chance to observe the situation at the scene. They arrived at the train station early in the morning, around 9:30 a.m. Although the newly constructed train station was far from the grandeur of the pre-apocalyptic era, it was still relatively clean and tidy. Because it was early in the morning, all the lights in the train station were turned on. The lighting was bright enough to clearly illuminate the station. Standing next to his aunt, Lu Zhou casually glanced around the train station. He noticed that the white walls had likely been freshly painted, and the floor was made of simple cement. Since transportation was currently inconvenient, there was only a single railway track. After entering the train station, the crowd quickly moved near the railway track to wait for the arrival of the people from Kyoto. The morning temperature was already quite cold, and Lu Zhou's breath quickly turned to mist in the air. The wind here was particularly strong, making everyone feel lightheaded. Lu Zhou tightly pulled his thick down jacket closer around him, his gaze following the railway track into the distance. The tracks lay quietly on the ground, accompanied only by the sound of the wind blowing through. Lu Zhou felt somewhat puzzled. The train was supposed to arrive around 9:10 a.m. After waiting in the cold wind for about 20 minutes, Song Wei, who stood at the forefront with a cold expression, had already turned numb from the cold. His secretary unconsciously shivered a few times and then took out a new military coat, intending to hand it to Song Wei. "Director Song, it's too cold. Please put on this jacket," someone said. Song Wei's expression showed a hint of irritation. However, he obediently put on the jacket. "First, call the train conductor to ask what's going on." "The train has been delayed for 20 minutes, Song Wei said. As soon as he finished speaking, someone promptly made the call. "It's strange for the train to be delayed for so long. There might have been an accident along the way." Although Song Wei was quite annoyed with this group of people, he would be even more troubled if they died on the road. The person responsible for making the call quickly ran back with the phone in hand. Song Wei looked at him and immediately asked, "What's going on? Is there a problem?" The young soldier's face turned red, and he looked somewhat indignant and hesitant, unsure whether to speak up. Song Wei furrowed his brows, his voice instinctively becoming stern. "Speak up. What happened?" The young soldier held the phone and, in a dazed manner, said, "Report to Director Song. I just called the train conductor, and there were no unexpected issues." Song Wei didn't respond, his gaze continuing to fixate on the young soldier, urging him to go on. "It's just that among the group coming from Kyoto, someone had a birthday, so they delayed the train to celebrate the birthday." At this moment, not only did Song Wei fail to understand, but the others were also baffled. Does celebrating a birthday affect the train's progress? Finally, the young soldier stammered. The train conductor said that when they passed through the Aya mountain range, this group strongly requested to stop the train and set off fireworks to celebrate. This action caused a delay of 2 hours. The crowd, who were still puzzled earlier, now felt their teeth grinding in frustration. What a joke! They had braved the cold and arrived early, only to find that the other party was delaying the train for a birthday celebration. The young soldier also found this ridiculous. Holding the phone, he looked indignant yet flustered. Song Wei's expression remained cold. After a long pause, he huffed a sound from his nose and ordered, "Everyone, follow orders and leave the train station. Inform the train conductor that the train must execute a sea-level mission and leave the platform immediately. Lu Zhou smiled, amused. Director Song is quite ruthless, huh? Earlier, they had specifically driven over to pick up this group. The train station was quite far from the city center, and they needed a vehicle to get there. If they had to walk to the city in this weather, they wouldn't die, but they would definitely feel half dead by the time they arrived. Because of this group's absurd behavior, no one wanted to say a good word to them anymore. However, the secretary offered a few words of persuasion. Director Song, how about leaving a few staff members here to assist them? Not to mention anything else, it would be good to guide them. Song Wei looked weary and said, "Let's go. These people don't deserve it." Seeing Song Wei's attitude, everyone quickly understood that he was quite irritated. They all left the train station in a hurry. Once they got in the car, Zhang Jiahui, Lu Zhou, and Wei Qingzhu shared a vehicle together. They couldn't help but feel a sense of schadenfreude. Haha, this is hilarious. I really want to see how this group is going to get to the city comfortably. Chapter 5:13, Villains. To be honest, Lu Zhou was also a bit curious about how the Kyoto delegation managed to arrive in the central area of the underground city. After all, it would take them about 40 minutes by car, and on foot, considering the temperature, it would really be exhausting. But then again, who could blame them for their own misfortune? The smile on Lu Zhou's face gradually turned icy. After a few words from the Zhang family, he no longer paid attention to this matter. On the train conductor looked at the message he had just received and immediately felt a headache coming on. Under the direct orders of Director Song, once the train arrived at the station, everyone must leave the platform immediately, executing a Class C mission. The conductor understood the situation as clearly as a mirror. He knew that Director Song was quite dissatisfied with these individuals, which was why he had specifically instructed them to leave to prevent these people from having the opportunity to linger. Though he understood this in his heart, the train staff had no intention of saying anything nice for this group or giving them a hint. Along the way, this group of second-generation elites, who were all show and no substance, had caused quite a ruckus. First, they threw a wild party. As for how the conductor found out about it, it was entirely because the train staff, while going through the carriages to serve food, were startled when they entered and saw the situation. In this case, although the order was chaotic towards the end, many places might have these gatherings, but in the Liangshan underground city, such gatherings could lead to jail time if reported. In a sense, Song Wei managed the Liangshan underground city exceptionally well. Its order was considered the most orderly among all underground cities. He was known for being strict and impartial. Not only would he punish others for mistakes, but even his own trusted aides would face consequences for their wrongdoings. From any perspective, Song Wei could definitely be regarded as an outstanding leader. The train staff, in a flurry, ran to inform the conductor of this news. The conductor was first surprised, then incredulous. How could this group of people, the Kyoto delegation, engage in such behavior? Could it be that the order in Kyoto wasn't as good as that of the Liangshan underground city? All the employees on this train were from the Liangshan underground city, and compared to the outside world, they were more disciplined. The conductor's brows twitched, but regarding the behavior of these individuals, he certainly couldn't just march up and lecture them. After all, the people backing them were much stronger than the common folks like him, so it was not his place to speak. Thus, the conductor could only instruct his subordinates not to enter casually. However, even so, it almost led to a mistake. The young train attendant, Xiao Tao, was new, came from a relatively good family, and had experienced little hardship. With her charming looks, she resembled a beautiful camellia. At that moment, it was Xiao Tao's duty time. Inside the carriage, this group of people demanded that the train staff provide them with hot water for washing up. Xiao Tao quickly checked the hot water system and then spoke through the intercom. "Hello, passengers. The hot water is available. You could try it now." As she spoke, an intense noise erupted from the carriage. Soon after, an angry voice came from the other side. "What a load of rubbish still in Liangshan. You better come over here and see what this lousy hot water is all about." Being new, Xiao Tao felt shy and didn't want to go alone, so she could only brace herself and head over. The little girl pushed open the door and was immediately scared pale by the chaotic scene inside, where all sorts of demons were dancing. Having received training, she managed to stay relatively calm, though her voice trembled slightly. "Passenger, let me see what's going on with the hot water." When Xiao Tao arrived, she had brought maintenance tools with her. She was small and slender, and as she slipped into the equipment box of the hot water pool, she looked quite at ease. The men around her, dressed in nothing but their own skin, looked at each other's beautiful yet feigned calm faces, suddenly feeling a surge of mischievous intentions. "Passenger, there's no problem with the hot water. Could you try again?" What are you trying to do?" Xiao Tao was focused on checking, and after confirming that there was no error in the pipeline system, she was about to get up when she suddenly found herself surrounded by two men. With smiles of delight on their faces, they looked as terrifying as demons. "Let me take a look at the hot water personally." One of the men chuckled as he crouched down, grabbed Xiao Tao, and reached out to touch her private parts. Xiao Tao reacted quickly, sidestepping to avoid the attack. The other man clicked his tongue. "Useless, let me do it." Saying that, he continued to approach Xiao Tao. Although Xiao Tao was young, she could naturally sense these men's intentions. She immediately pressed the emergency button, and her companions, upon hearing it, would rush over as quickly as possible. For now, she needed to buy some time. In the driver's cabin, the train conductor and the crew were all startled by the sharp sound of the alarm. They hurriedly got up and first checked which type of alarm it was. It wasn't machinery-related, nor was it about the tracks or hardware measures. It was the crew was in danger. The deputy conductor immediately realized what was happening. He exclaimed, "Could it be that something happened to Xiao Tao? She's supposed to be in charge right now." The conductor didn't say a word, but immediately stood up, his tone stern. "Everyone, quickly follow me to the carriage and see what's going on with Xiao Tao." During the day, everyone had experienced the arrogance and cruelty of this group of people, and now that they thought something might have happened to their companion, they naturally became worried. One by one, they got up and rushed toward the carriage. Inside the carriage, Xiao Tao was gasping for breath, holding a wrench in her hand. The closest man had already been knocked unconscious on the floor by her wrench, while the other one had an expression full of anger. "Bitch, you dare to fight back? Do you know who you're hitting?" You probably don't know. When you lose your job later, and your parents are out of work too, don't come kneeling to beg me." The man laughed sinisterly, his smile full of superiority. Due to the commotion, the other passengers in the carriage were attracted to the scene. These privileged children all gathered around. Some helped the man on the ground, while others watched as if it were a show, staring at the girl who seemed like a trapped beast. Some even coldly advised, "Since you've come to Liangshan, you should be more restrained. Our family sent us here to check the situation, not to cause trouble." However, such remarks were quickly drowned out by other voices. A girl dressed in glamorous attire, who was currently wearing nothing underneath but had thrown a fur coat over her, walked over in high heels. She was beautiful, with an air of indifference that came from being satisfied by wealth. The others whistled, enjoying the spectacle. Chapter 514, Stunned. The poor thing is really in trouble. Ms. Zheng has a terrible temper. Xiao Tao trembled all over. She wanted to leave the carriage, but both doors were locked by this group of people. As the women drew closer, Xiao Tao's mind went blank, not knowing how to react. Zheng Yin quickly walked over and slapped Xiao Tao hard across the face. "You shameless woman, who allowed you to hit my fiancé? It's your blessing that he even looks at you, and you dare to hurt him?" As if not satisfied, she slapped Xiao Tao again, quickly reddening her cheeks. Xiao Tao was about to resist when the others around her hastily began to advise her. Hey, don't move. This young lady is not someone you can mess with. Just let her vent her anger. If we get back later, she'll make you suffer even more." Xiao Tao's hand that was about to resist gradually relaxed. She felt helpless, fear, anxiety, and other emotions washed over her, forcing her to yield to the other party. She couldn't afford to lose this job, and her family couldn't compete with them. "Forget it, it's just a beating. She'll endure it, and it will be over soon." After Zheng Yin finished hitting her, She felt irritable. This is really unlucky. The beautiful manicure I just got is ruined, and this diamond has been knocked off. Hey, you shameless girl. Do you know that this diamond is something you could never afford in your lifetime? She was extremely arrogant, stepping on the already beaten Xiao Tao with her high heels, as if to vent her frustrations and even press down hard. Xiao Tao's face was already swollen and hot. She had been scratched by Zheng Yan's sharp nails and manicure, making her look particularly miserable. This person is really weak. You can play with her however you want. I'll take care of the rest. Zheng Yan got up with a smile and walked away, then sat down on the sofa to talk with her fiancé. Brother Bai, don't be angry. I've taught her a lesson for you. The man who was knocked out by Xiao Tao was Bai Jun, the most promising heir of the Bai family. His handsome face was twisted as he spoke viciously. That's not enough. Hey, are you all dead? This kind of woman should be tortured. Otherwise, how can we justify what she did to me? Damn, that really hurts. Bai Jun rubbed the back of his head, where there was a huge bump. The others, upon hearing Bai Jun and Zheng Yan's words, hesitated and approached, pulling Xiao Tao off the ground. Bai Jun, as if venting his anger, quickly walked over and was about to slap her twice when the carriage door was suddenly opened. The people who appeared were all employees of the train. The train conductor quickly scanned the chaotic scene, and the first thing he saw was the pitiful Xiao Tao. Bai Jun didn't have time to act before he was knocked aside by the rushing train staff. They hurriedly supported Xiao Tao and took her away from their hands. The train conductor was furious. Passengers, what's going on? Why did you beat our train staff for no reason? Bai Jun, with a cold expression, pointed to the big bump on the back of his head. For no reason? Your staff attacked me first. I was just retaliating. The train conductor remained calm. He could see at a glance what had really happened. How about this, sir? We have surveillance cameras. Why don't we check the footage? As soon as the surveillance was mentioned, Bai Jun immediately realized he should back off. After all, he was indeed the one who ignored the situation at first. With a cold snort, Bai Jun said ominously, You're quite impressive, but when this little girl wakes up, tell her that I won't let her off so easily. His voice was as cold as a snake, and the train conductor felt the situation was becoming tricky. I can only report this matter truthfully, but what will happen to the poor little Tao? The train conductor felt sorry for the crew, but had to endure it. After they left, Zheng Yan was furious. It's ridiculous. The lower class, people who used to crawl under our feet before the apocalypse, can now sit at the same table and talk to us like this. Do they even know our background? The others dared not speak, and among the group, only Zheng Yan and Bai Huan had the strongest influence. Bai Huan chuckled. Hey, you all go tell the train conductor that we want to stop at the AI mountain range to enjoy the scenery. I heard it's particularly beautiful there. By the way, Yinner, isn't it your birthday? I specially prepared some fireworks for you. The others hesitated. Someone spoke up. Is this really okay? If we delay, it won't be easy to explain to Liang Shan. Bai Huan chuckled again. Liang Shan? What's that? Just a bunch of ignorant peasants from a remote area. Do they really think they have any status? We represent the capital. I doubt anyone would dare not to comply with us. All right, just listen to me. The others dared not refute and could only agree to notify the train crew. The conductor, feeling helpless, sent a message to his superiors and could only stop the train reluctantly. However, coincidentally, due to poor signal, the message sent to his superiors was not successfully delivered. After wasting about 2 hours, the train could finally continue its journey. When the conductor received a call from his superior, he was initially shocked and then realized that he couldn't send a text message, so he quickly started to explain. Fortunately, the superior was somewhat understanding and didn't reprimand the conductor too harshly, issuing a notice to leave the platform immediately upon arrival. The conductor thought about the situation these people were about to face and couldn't help but tremble with excitement. Right? I still need to report on the matter regarding little Tao. 2 hours later, the train finally arrived at the station. Bai Huan looked out the window, his expression filled with disdain. His follower immediately spoke up. What a shabby decoration. This train station is embarrassing to use as a facade. TSK, let me see where the welcoming party is. After saying this, the follower started looking left and right, but he didn't see anyone coming to greet them. At this point, he felt slightly uncertain. It must be that he didn't see them. It wouldn't make sense for the capital's delegation to arrive without anyone coming to greet us. Once the train completely stopped at the platform, the conductor asked the group to disembark. Everyone, we have arrived. Please get off the train. We still have a mission to carry out. These people hadn't reacted yet, and one by one, they grabbed their things and got off the train. As soon as they stepped out of the train doors, they were nearly frozen to death. Damn, it's so cold. This damn place is both poor and cold. It's practically barbaric. All right, enough complaining. Let's find out where the welcoming party is. Isn't there a pavilion over there? Maybe they're waiting there. As this group left the train, the conductor's gaze was cold. He immediately boarded the train, started it up, and left directly. When this group of second-generation elites arrived at the pavilion, they were immediately dumbfounded. Chapter 515. Asking for trouble. It was different from what they had imagined. The pavilion was completely empty, desolate and deserted. Not even the stove meant for warmth had been lit. The stove looked like it had been extinguished for some time, with charred edges that emitted no heat whatsoever. It lay there, isolated in the center. The group looked through a small window of the pavilion and saw this scene. Inside the pavilion, there should have been some essential work items, making the entire small structure feel particularly lonely and desolate. Someone muttered, "This broken pavilion only has one, and it's still closed." They made jokes without restraint, mocking the remote desolation of Liangshan, since there were no signs of other people in sight. After they had laughed enough and shivered in the cold wind for about 2 hours, they realized that no one had come to pick them up. The weather was cold. Even though it was already 7:30 in the morning, the temperature remained low. Some of them had thought that the car would come to pick them up, and when they got out of the vehicle, they hadn't even worn very thick clothing. The pride they had just a moment ago was now replaced with despair. Zheng Yin wore fur, but had thin clothing underneath, unable to withstand such low temperatures. She was wearing limited edition Chanel high heels, which were beautiful but offered almost no warmth. After waiting outside for so long, it was clear that even wearing cotton shoes would not be enough to fend off the cold. Damn, then Liangshan are too bold, are they? Not even one person has come to welcome us. Zheng Yin trembled with cold, her previous haughty demeanor completely gone. Beside her, Yu Hong was not faring much better. His eyes were deep like water, and due to the frigid weather, he could only shiver as he took out his phone, trying to call the person in charge. After several unsuccessful attempts due to unstable signals, he was ready to throw his phone in frustration, but thought better of it since he would need to contact his family later. But the low temperature here was unbearable. During the 2 hours of waiting, they had been cursing loudly, hardly a moment of silence among them. Once they grew tired of cursing and felt sufficiently frozen, they all realized one thing. No one from Liangshan had come to pick them up. To keep warm, they huddled closely together. As the wind howled on the platform, they moved further inside to escape the biting cold. In the center of the crowd were Yu Hong and Zheng Yin. Their pride was gone, their faces frozen to a dark hue, their lips a shade of blue. They looked extremely unwell. Zheng Yin trembled as she spoke. "Damn Liangshan, how dare they treat us so dismissively? I don't care. I will definitely tell my family when I get back." The others felt equally indignant. In such a remote place, the lack of a single person to greet them was not just an insult to them, but a slap in the face to the entire capital. And now, due to the poor signal, they couldn't even contact their families. Bai Huan calmed down and finally said, "Let's walk a little further. We can make the call later. The signal here is poor since we are at the train station." Many people found this suggestion reasonable. The group immediately set off as the weather was cold and no one wanted to stay there any longer. However, some couldn't help but complain. What bad luck. If I had known this situation, I would have rather stayed on the train and waited for them to come pick us up instead of getting off. At this moment, everyone missed the warm temperature inside the train, the thoughtful service, as well as the food and entertainment options. Zheng Yin was the most annoyed. Her feet hurt terribly, and because of the cold, they were gradually losing feeling. She was particularly afraid that her feet would get frostbite. After looking around, Zheng Yin pointed at a girl and ordered, "Liang Lily, give me your shoes." Liang Lily came from a relatively poor background compared to the others in the group, and she looked terrified, unable to react. Zheng Yin found Liang Lily's expression irritating and laughed in annoyance. "What? Can't you understand human words?" Liang Lily bit her lower lip, her eyes full of hesitation. She was afraid of the cold since she was little, and she had worn very thick shoes when coming here. Looking at Zheng Yan's shoes, she felt that wearing them would be deadly for her. With a hint of a sob in her voice, she said, "Zheng Yan, I can't stand the cold. I might die. Besides, I helped you deal with that *TCH on the train, didn't I?" Liang Lily was usually keen to be Zheng Yan's follower, and she had put in a lot of effort during the previous altercation. But now, unexpectedly encountering this emergency situation, Zheng Yin treated her this way. Liang Lily's words didn't evoke any sympathy from Zheng Yin. Instead, she impatiently said, "I'm doing you a favor by letting you wear my shoes. Don't be ungrateful." Thinking of Zheng Yan's backing, Liang Lily wanted to say something, but dared not. She could only slowly take off her cotton shoes and hand them to Zheng Yin. Zheng Yin tossed aside her high heels, and when she slipped her feet into Liang Lily's cotton shoes, she felt comfortable, her eyes slightly lifting in satisfaction. Meanwhile, Liang Lily helplessly put on the high heels. This scene was witnessed by everyone, but since it didn't involve their own interests, no one spoke up for Liang Lily. In the middle of it all, Bai Huan coldly observed the group, making a scene without saying a word. He was already chilled to the bone from the cold wind and had no energy to deal with such nonsense. The weather was shockingly cold. After just a few steps, they felt their heads becoming incredibly heavy from the wind. Even moving forward became exceedingly difficult. Because the high heels were so tall and thin, Liang Lily, despite wearing thick socks, felt a bone-chilling cold piercing through her feet. After getting Liang Lily's shoes, Zheng Yan's expression improved somewhat, but it was still far from good. As the group walked, Liang Lily gradually fell to the back of the line. No one cared about her. Enduring the stabbing pain in her feet, every step felt like stepping on a blade. The pain was so intense that her face turned pale. When she looked up at the group ahead, her vision blurred. Pain, cold, anger, and dissatisfaction flooded her fragile mind all at once. When she looked up at Zheng Yin in the crowd again, she felt overwhelming hatred. Chapter 516, finally here. Why? She had done quite a lot for him. Why was it that in a situation like this, he would throw her aside first? Rage surged in Liang Lily's chest, and she glared resentfully at the beautiful figure in the crowd a few times before reluctantly quickening her pace to catch up. But her feet were freezing and almost numb. The group had walked on foot through the ice and snow for an hour. Just when they felt they were almost far enough from the train station, Zhuang Ran trembled as she took out her phone with shaking hands and urgently dialed a number. Beep, beep, beep. As the phone rang, everyone silently prayed for the person on the other and to pick up quickly and send someone to rescue their group. It was deadly to walk in such cold weather. After persistently making a few calls, Zhuang Ran finally got through on the last attempt. The voice on the other end was calm, even laced with a hint of seriousness. However, Zhuang Ran didn't notice. She just vented her anger and dissatisfaction. "Hello, is this how you treat us in Liangshan? Is the Kyoto delegation so disdained? If you don't give me an explanation today, I will definitely not let this go." Zhuang Ran's first words were a threat, clearly showing how she usually handled matters. On the other end of the line was Zhai Qingyun. Ordinarily, Zhai Qingyun shouldn't have been the one to handle this matter, but Song Wei was busy destroying the surveillance device Sun, so she had to take charge of this situation. Furthermore, this matter involved a group of second-generation heirs, and other ordinary employees might not be able to deal with it, so Song Wei trusted Zhai Qingyun's abilities and entrusted her with full authority to handle it. Hearing Zhuang Ran's furious outburst, Zhai Qingyun just chuckled lightly. Wasn't it you who decided to go celebrate a birthday and delayed the schedule? Does Kyoto know about this? Hmm? Do your parents know the kind of children they've sent out? Zhuang ran, who had been arrogant just a second ago, suddenly deflated. He really didn't dare to let his family know about this matter. Otherwise, his position as the heir could be at risk. Yet he still pretended to be tough. How dare you? Who are you to talk to me like this? Zhai Qingyun's tone was extremely indifferent. I heard that the Zhuang family has another child, right? A little younger than you. But I've heard that child is quite good in dealing with people. It's just that his background isn't very good. If there's a problem with the heir, I wonder if the Zhuang family will consider replacing him. Zhai Qingyun spoke lightly, but every word struck at Zhuang Ran's fragile heart. Though he publicly claimed to be the Zhuang family's heir, his illegitimate brother was not inferior to him at all. In terms of ability and character, he might even surpass him. The Zhuang family was actually quite conflicted and hadn't decided who the true heir should be yet. Zhai Qingyun's words simply vented the frustration in Zhuang Ran's heart. After finishing her statement, Zhai Qingyun decisively hung up the phone. Zhuang Ran on the other end was left somewhat stunned. What the hell? He hadn't even finished stating his demands, and this person dared to hang up on him. He was not ready to give up and called back, but no one answered. The atmosphere around was dead silent. Everyone was both cold and exhausted. They had seen hope, but now due to Zhuang Ran's few words, it seemed that the other side had no intention of sending help. At this point, everyone developed some resentment towards Zheng Yin and Zhuang Ran. It was all their fault. If they hadn't gone to celebrate a birthday, they wouldn't have been late, which led to Liang Shan's dissatisfaction and caused them to suffer so much. However, these things were only things they dared to think about in their hearts. Liang Shan has independent economic and military power, so they had the confidence to confront Bai Ran, but they were all from the capital, and the Bai family's influence was obviously the strongest. If they didn't want to make their later lives miserable, it was better not to provoke the Bai family. Everyone dared to be angry, but didn't dare to speak out, yet they still wanted to make an effort. Someone bravely suggested, "Why don't we take turns to call? Sooner or later, someone will answer." This suggestion was quickly approved by everyone. Bai Ran was unwilling in her heart, but it was indeed too cold and tiring, so she had no choice but to agree. Liang Lily was left behind by everyone, and when she slowly came over, no one even bothered to spare her a glance. Seeing this scene, Liang Lily felt particularly pitiful, and her hatred for this group of people grew even stronger. She had thought that by doing more for these people, they would accept her, but it turned out that she was just being presumptuous, with her identity not matching. How could they possibly include her in their circle? Hatred surged in her heart, but Liang Lily didn't dare to show it. Zheng Yin glanced at her, gave her a quick look, but didn't say anything. Liang Lily awkwardly bit her lip and leaned against a tree to relieve the fatigue in her body. After wasting half an hour, the call finally got through. Of course, the other party was no longer Zhai Qingyun, but an ordinary staff member. The staff member explained that due to the poor road conditions, the vehicle responsible for picking them up hadn't received them in the morning and had gone out on a mission. They would send another vehicle over, but it would take time. Hearing this explanation, the group's dissatisfaction with Bai Ran and Zheng Yin grew even more. Someone urged, "Please hurry up. We're dressed too lightly. We're about to freeze to death here." This was the truth. They all felt that if they returned like this, they would definitely catch a cold and fever. Zheng Yin was no longer in the mood, feeling utterly defeated. The group had long since transformed from their previous relaxed state into one of disarray. The staff member at the other end of the line rolled his eyes inwardly and cursed under his breath, but spoke reassuringly, "Don't worry, we'll be there soon, probably in 2 to 3 hours." When the others heard it would still take 2 to 3 hours, they were almost numb. They wanted to say something more, but found that due to poor signal, the call had already ended. At this moment, everyone looked at each other, wearing expressions of helplessness and frustration. Liang Lily curled up under the tree, tightly wrapping her clothes around her frozen feet. The colder it got, the more her feet hurt. Eventually, they became numb. The group quietly stayed where they were, waiting for the vehicle to arrive. No one had expected that their first visit to Liangshan would be so miserable. Someone couldn't take it anymore, feeling outraged, and wanted to call home to complain about what Liangshan had done, but was stopped by Rant's glare. "What are you calling for?" What we did earlier was ignored first. This person naturally knew what Ran was referring to and was furious. "Damn it, it's none of my business. I didn't obstruct the train, it's all your fault." But they dared not express their anger and could only obediently put away their phones. Others still wanted to complain, but seeing Rant's attitude, they could only swallow their grievances. After about 3 hours, a vehicle finally appeared slowly in the distance. Chapter 517, Missed Opportunity. The speed of this vehicle was not fast, possibly due to the poor road conditions. When the pedestrians saw the car approaching, the air of arrogance that had surrounded the upper-class individuals instantly vanished. "The car is coming." At this moment, who cared about anything else? Everyone shouted at the top of their lungs, desperately trying to make themselves heard, afraid that the vehicle would overlook their group. Even Ran, at this moment, set aside his useless pride, his expression anxious as he joined in the shouting. The vehicle quickly drove closer. As it got nearer, the crowd finally saw that it was actually a rather shabby large truck. It could accommodate all of them, but they dared not think about what the environment inside would be like. After enduring several hours of the cold climate, these people were barely able to utter a single sentence. Strong dragons cannot suppress local snakes, and the situation in Liangshan might have already escaped the control and intentions of Kyoto. Rant's arrogance faded from the very beginning to a calmer demeanor now. These individuals were also exhausted, and in the end, they had no energy to discuss the issue of how shabby the truck was. One by one, they silently climbed into the vehicle. Once the driver in the front seat confirmed that everyone had gotten in, the truck slowly started moving forward. As for the second-generation individuals in the cargo area, they completely lost the leisurely and arrogant attitude they had at the beginning. One by one, they found a place to sit, not even caring whether the interior of the truck was clean. However, the only comforting thing was that the interior had a heating system, so this group of people finally felt a long-lost sense of comfort. The warm air slowly dried the dampness on their bodies. Everyone felt their limbs, which had been frozen outside just moments ago, gradually recovering. Meanwhile, Liang Lily hurriedly massaged her feet, trying to stimulate blood circulation. But soon, she realized something was wrong. Her feet seemed to be frostbitten. Completely devoid of sensation, even with the warm air, her feet felt stiff and hard. Moreover, the color of her skin was not normal. At this moment, her feet looked particularly like a pair that had been frostbitten, dark and bluish. Liang Lily's heart sank, and she increased the pressure of her massage. Soon, she discovered a cruel fact. Her feet had no sensation at all. Not to mention a massage, even vigorous slapping or pinching elicited no pain whatsoever. Liang Lily caused quite a commotion, and the others were already feeling irritable. Now, seeing that the lowest-ranking individual among them dared to make such noise, they couldn't contain their anger. The person speaking was a young man from a decent background named Deng Zhou, a close friend of Ran, though his family background was naturally not as good as the Bai families. At this moment, Liang Lily was in no mood to worry about whether she would anger him. Her voice carried a hint of a sob. "My feet, they feel like they're numb." Deng Zhou wasn't interested in her plight at all. He looked Liang Lily up and down, not forgetting to continue his sarcastic remarks. "Isn't this what you deserve? Wearing high heels. How could your feet not get frostbitten?" After saying this, Deng Zhou crossed his arms and leaned against the carriage, unwilling to pay any more attention to Liang Lily. The others, because of Deng Zhou's words, exchanged several glances. Zheng Yan, who was surrounded by the crowd, showed no signs of panic in her eyes. Liang Lily saw clearly that the other party's gaze briefly revealed a fleeting sense of relief. The anger in Liang Lily's heart grew wildly, like weeds growing rampantly. She hated the indifferent Zheng Yan in front of her, who seemed to be secretly celebrating. She also despised the indifferent onlookers around her. Liang Lily remained silent, fiercely engraving the faces of the 13 people around her into her mind. She would definitely seek revenge. The small episode in the car quickly passed. After a 2-hour journey, this group of young people finally set foot in Liangshan for the first time. When they were taken to their resting place, they no longer dared to look down on Liangshan. Forget about the nonsense that Liangshan is a place for country bumpkins. The city planning of Liangshan, as well as the advanced drones, artificial intelligence, and energy technology within the city, did not seem inferior to their capital, and in some aspects, it even surpassed their capital. Deng Zhou pointed to his earphones, astonished. Wow, the artificial intelligence here is already this advanced. In his ear, the AI assistant, Xiao Yi, was making suggestions. Hello, Kyoto traveler Deng Zhou. Welcome to Liangshan Underground City. The current temperature in the city is minus 36 degrees Celsius. It has been detected that you are underdressed. Please put on more clothing. Additionally, your blood pressure is low, and there is a risk of frostbite on your feet. It is recommended that you seek medical attention immediately. After receiving Xiao Yi's reminder, Deng Zhou realized that his feet were indeed frostbitten. The others, also alerted by the artificial intelligence, discovered some pains on their bodies that they had ignored. They quickly contacted the driver who had just driven them, hoping he could take them to the hospital for a checkup. Having witnessed Liangshan's boldness firsthand, they were now much more cautious and polite, no longer daring to speak arrogantly. If others saw the drastic change in his attitude, they would certainly call him a chameleon. The other young people also made a concerted effort to show their grace and composure. This group had been accustomed to adapting to circumstances since childhood. They would submit to the strong and trample on the weak, having developed a physiological instinct. Having witnessed the power of this underground city, they no longer dared to act recklessly or look down on others as they once did. Although the driver was reluctant to take these people, he had no choice. After all, they were from Kyoto, and since they had not behaved inappropriately, he could not let Liangshan take the blame first. Soon, these young people arrived at the hospital. No one expected that the first stop for these young people in Liangshan would actually be the hospital. After arriving at the hospital, they were first treated for frostbite, and shortly thereafter, many of them came down with fevers and colds. This continued for several days, and it wasn't until the day before the Destroy the Sun plan that they finally recovered. Deng Zhou's complexion was grim. He had planned to take the opportunity to visit that place, which was said to control the flow of time, a few days before the implementation of the Destroy the Sun plan. However, no one had anticipated that their expedition would be so unfortunate. Upon arriving in Liangshan, they fell ill with fevers and colds until the other side was ready to start serious business. Chapter 518, Shocked. At this moment, Baiyin had some doubts. Could it be that the other party had this in mind? Deliberately not coming to rescue them, taking their time with treatment, and controlling the timing? However, these were just speculations. Baiyin had made some foolish mistakes in the past, which were real and substantial. Baiyin held onto these items, which were not evidence, and could not harm Liang Mountain in the slightest. The situation was different for Liang Mountain. They had a bunch of evidence of their group's foolishness in hand, and if they casually showed it to the capital, people from the capital would definitely come to punish them. Thinking about punishing them afterward, for the first time, Baiyin felt he had been too careless. But he couldn't blame himself entirely. Before coming to Liang Mountain's underground city, their group had visited a few other underground cities. In those places, as soon as the locals saw them, they wouldn't dare to ignore them. Instead, they would serve them food and drink, their attitude extremely respectful. This had made him let his guard down. But unexpectedly, the underground city of Liang Mountain was completely different. For the first time, Baiyin felt regret. Unintentionally, a saying from his grandfather floated into his mind. Be cautious, never be careless. But he truly hadn't acted that way. Baiyin clenched his fists, feeling a bit of his frustration and anger temporarily alleviated. Liang Lily, after undergoing emergency treatment, still ended up with a broken foot. Her left foot had to be amputated, but fortunately, her right foot was completely unharmed. During this period, none of the people from their group, came to visit her. For the first time, Liang Lily felt that it wasn't just about playing together. They were all just the same kind of people. A glimmer of madness flashed in her eyes, but she was currently able to conceal it with difficulty. These arrogant and rude people all deserve to die. Zheng Yan's feet were also frostbitten, but since she had snatched Liang Lily's shoes, the extent of her frostbite wasn't too severe. Later, when she learned that Liang Lily had lost her left foot, she had no particularly strong reaction either. Tisk, when Liang Lily was her follower, she had often given her all sorts of things, so why did she think she could just keep being a follower? Before the apocalypse, Zheng Yan was a typical spoiled young lady, surrounded by countless sycophants, and she had never thought about developing any feelings for these followers. Soon, the time for the destruction of the sun arrived. Lu Zhou, the Zhang family, Wei Qingzhu, Song Wei, and all the scientists were all waiting for the day to come. In the past few days, Song Wei had been busy managing the details of the destruction plan and had no time to pay attention to those representatives from the capital. Those representatives had also stayed in the hospital for quite some time, only arriving on the day of the event. Song Wei didn't stop them from coming. There was no need, and the capital knew about the destruction plan. These representatives could come or not as they pleased. What really worried him was whether this mission would be completed. Although they had the weaponry filled, the success rate of destroying the monitoring devices was not 100%. It had temporarily been raised to 90%. Wei Qingzhu was busy calculating and having people check the data. In the entire hall, everyone was busy completing their tasks. After about an hour, those representatives arrived. Song Wei planned to directly find someone to take those people around for a tour. However, soon, Lu Zhou personally spoke up, wanted to take on this task. He was very eager to see these second-generation rich kids up close. Song Wei's expression didn't change significantly. Instead, he called for Zhai Qingyan. Minister Zhai, you should go with Xiao Lu. Just do it however you want, but be careful. There are some things you can't let them know. Song Wei didn't care about this plan, but there was a possibility that some messages he had been hiding could be exposed in this plan. That's why he sent Zhai Qingyun to monitor the situation. As the two of them walked towards the door, Zhai Qingyun shot a sidelong glance at Lu Zhou and suddenly laughed. You say, as the nephew of Professor Wei, you don't really need to do this job, do you? Zhai Qingyun was always malicious in her speech, and Lu Zhou was already aware of this. This woman seemed to enjoy provoking others, making statements that pierced directly at the opponent's heart, leaving them feeling choked and uncomfortable. Lu Zhou wasn't too affected. He remained calm on the way, but his tone was icy. I've heard that the second-generation kids are quite arrogant and dismissive. I just want to see if that's really the case. Zhai Qingyun seemed to have heard something particularly amusing, chuckling lightly. Well, you guessed it pretty accurately. These people are consistently like that. Though they were talking, their pace remained quick. Zhai Qingyun, dressed in military uniform, stood tall and straight, almost as tall as Lu Zhou. However, she was exceptionally beautiful, exuding a strong feminine charm. Suddenly, Lu Zhou became curious about what kind of person Zhai Qingyun was. Her family background, what kind of person she was. For what you said, Minister Zhai, you are also one of the second generation. Lu Zhou tentatively opened his mouth, and Zhai Qingyun's brow creased slightly in disgust, but the emotion vanished quickly. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to secure the position of Minister Zhai so quickly. Sometimes people are quite contradictory. They despise these things, yet have to rely on them to rise to power. Zhai Qingyun's tone was light and carefree, almost as if it were the same as usual, but Lu Zhou could detect her underlying disdain. He didn't know what to say, and after just 2 seconds of silence, they were interrupted. Excuse me, is this the control room? The leader was a handsome young man who didn't seem much older than Lu Zhou, at most 2 or 3 years. Behind him followed a long line of people, both men and women. Among them, the most eye-catching was a woman at the end of the line. She was sitting in an electric wheelchair, her gaze dark and devoid of any light. Very strange. Lu Zhou slowly withdrew his attention and focused on the young man in front of him. When Lu Zhou made eye contact with the young man, he quickly noticed something was off. The young man wore a sweater chain around his neck, seemingly made of platinum, with a very small character engraved on it, Bai. Lu Zhou's pupils suddenly contracted. A member of the Bai family? He remained expressionless, but he had already scanned the young man in front of him from head to toe. His appearance was impeccable, but his temperament was hard to assess. How should he put it? He seemed to be putting on quite a show. While assessing the other party, Bai Ran was also quickly sizing up the two people in front of him. The first thing he noticed was Minister Zhai, proud and tall, her face beautiful like that of an elf, but her eyes held a strong disdain that made Bai Ran involuntarily shudder a few times. When he discreetly shifted his attention to the young man with a delicate appearance in front of him, he suddenly felt his whole body stiffen, unable to move. Chapter 519, Friction. Danger. Extremely dangerous. Sometimes, human intuition is surprisingly accurate. When Bai Ran saw the man beside Minister Zhai, he even suspected that this person was a mercenary. He exuded an aura of death, and his eyes revealed a soul-stirring intimidation. Although the man in front of him was currently smiling, for some reason, Bai Ran keenly sensed that the other party seemed to be scrutinizing him, inside and out. Upon realizing this possibility, Bai Ran couldn't help but tremble all over. However, when he cast his gaze back again, he found that the sensation had completely vanished. The other party seemed to be merely smiling faintly. Bai Ran shook his head, trying to appear as normal as possible. Wake up, the situation in Liangshan is unknown. He couldn't afford to make another mistake. Lu Zhou seemed to see through Bai Ran's thoughts and slowly smiled, saying, "Yes, this is the control room. Just follow us." As for this person, he is Minister Zhai, currently the second in command in Liangshan. Bai Ran hurriedly extended his hand, wanting to shake hands with the other party. Zhai Qingyun seemed to have an extraordinary demeanor at first glance. However, Zhai Qingyun showed him no courtesy, curling his lips and casually saying, "No need to be so polite. We spoke on the phone last time." After saying this, Zhai Qingyun ignored Bai Ran's gradually unpleasant expression and turned to leave. Lu Zhou followed slightly behind, but not too far from these second-generation elite individuals. Zheng Yin felt an inexplicable hostility towards Zhai Qingyun upon seeing her. To be honest, she always thought of herself as extraordinarily beautiful, but after entering Liangshan, the female soldiers here were unexpectedly much more beautiful than her. For example, Zheng Yin's beauty could be rated as an 8 out of 10, while the other party was an 18 out of 10, completely overshadowing Zheng Yin. Zheng Yin felt very dissatisfied. While Bai Ran was talking to Zhai Qingyun, she widened her eyes, carefully observing her fiancé, wanted to see if there was any surprise or other emotions in his eyes. Facing such a beautiful woman, Bai Ran was indeed in awe, but upon realizing that Zhai Qingyun was the one who had threatened him over the phone, his eyes suddenly darkened. He hated being threatened by others. No matter how beautiful the woman in front of him was, it didn't matter. Zheng Yin was very perceptive. She quickly noticed Bai Ran's aversion towards Zhai Qingyun, which made her feel a bit better. However, with Zhai Qingyun walking in front, everyone's attention would naturally be focused on her, leaving Zheng Yin behind as if she were an insignificant passerby. This made it unbearable for her. Zheng Yin had been pampered since childhood, treated like a princess by her family. She had several servants at home, and whenever someone came to serve her, they had to kneel like slaves from the old days. While it was indeed quite undignified, many people applied for the job because the pay was high. Since childhood, Zheng Yin had been the center of attention in any crowd. Whatever she wanted, she had to get. Things she disliked were handled by others, and anyone who overshadowed her would be warned by Zheng Yan's followers the next day. When had she ever been completely ignored? Being ignored was something Zheng Yin could not tolerate. She focused her gaze on Lu Zhou, who was leading them and was the closest to them. This man looked decent, and his physique clearly showed he had been well trained. After hesitating for a moment, Zheng Yin quickly took a few steps forward, following behind Minister Zhai. With a sharp voice, she called out, "Minister Zhai." Zhai Qingyun's footsteps did not stop, as if she hadn't heard the other person speak at all. Zheng Yin had never been ignored like this before. Her face changed from blue to white, filled with displeasure. At the back of the group, Liang Lily secretly smiled. She had been the other person's follower for a long time and knew that this would definitely infuriate Zheng Yin. Now, anyone who could make Zheng Yin unhappy made her happy in return. Along with that, Liang Lily had developed a bit of fondness for Director Zhai. Zheng Yin was a bit annoyed and bit her lip. If Director Zhai doesn't want to talk to me, just say it directly. Why bother with this? Zhai Qingyun's cold voice fell at the scene. You know that, yet you still ask. When these words were spoken, not only Zheng Yin was stunned, even the others were taken aback. However, they quickly turned to watch the spectacle unfold. Zheng Yin came from a good family, but her way of dealing with people was too intense. She had few true friends, and now that she was being retorted, many people naturally took pleasure in her misfortune. Zheng Yin felt even more wronged, with a hint of tears shimmering in her eyes. She turned to another target and asked Lu Zhou, "Hey, what are you doing?" Lu Zhou had a good temper and replied, "Lu Zhou." Zheng Yin felt like she had regained some ground, and now even looked at Lu Zhou more favorably. She quickly walked over and asked in a low voice, "How much longer until we arrive? Why is your director, Zhai, so cold?" Lu Zhou's footsteps were steady as he answered in a formal manner, "Very soon, about 1 hour or so, we should arrive. I'm not very familiar with Director Zhai, but I'm curious. What's the situation with the person in a wheelchair in your group? Isn't there anyone else in Kyoto to send over, sending a disabled person on such a long journey? Aren't you afraid of any accidents?" A few moments after Lu Zhou said this, everyone in the group perked up their ears. They wanted to hear how Zheng Yin would respond. At the back, Liang Lily tightened her grip on the armrest of the wheelchair, her eyes flashing with a hint of hatred. Zheng Yan's mouth involuntarily twisted into an unhappy smile, mixed with displeasure, but there was no fear at all. What was there to be afraid of? Since she was born, there had been nothing that could make Zheng Yin afraid. She was fine when she came, but she had a small accident along the way that caused her to end up like this. By the way, Chenze, why don't you push Liang Lily over? It wouldn't be good for her to sit alone in a wheelchair. Zheng Yin smiled sweetly and instructed another girl in the group. The girl who was supposed to push Chenze was slightly taken aback, but immediately turned around to push Liang Lily over. Liang Lily remained calm and showed no reaction. However, Lu Zhou could tell from her tightly clenched hands that she probably really disliked Zheng Yin. What could have caused Liang Lily to dislike Zheng Yin so much? Is it possible that the accident was caused by Zheng Yin? In Lu Zhou's mind, these thoughts and speculations flew around chaotically. In fact, Lu Zhou also asked out of curiosity, "Is it because of you that she's like this?" His tone was innocent, as if he was merely stating a common occurrence. Zheng Yan's forced smile froze on her face. Chun Zhe's hand, which was pushing Liang Lily's wheelchair, trembled slightly. Zheng Yin was filled with rage. She didn't expect that a mere guide would dare to casually speak to her like this, making things difficult for her. On the spot, Zheng Yin was about to explode. "Hey, Lu Zhou, right? How can you speak like that? Don't you think your words are particularly rude?" Chapter 520. Very incongruous. Zheng Yan's voice was cold and biting, seemingly imbued with ice. She carefully studied the fearless face of the person opposite her, wanting to remember this face, well, so that her family could find him later and deal with him. Lu Zhou said lightly, "I don't think I've been rude in what I've said. In fact, it is indeed the case, isn't it? So why are you so agitated?" Zheng Yin was rendered speechless, her eyes filled with anger. Zhai Qingyun let out a light laugh, her voice particularly charming. For some reason, it stirred a bit of fear within her. Zheng Yin, however, was infuriated and raised her head, turning around to curse. "Don't be too arrogant. With such a big tone, aren't you afraid of not being able to take responsibility later?" Zheng Yin had never been afraid of anything in her life, and while Zhai Qingyun wanted to stop her, he also found her quite displeasing. So he let Zhang Yin take the fall and serve as a test to see how the other side would react or respond. Lu Zhou remained completely unfazed, while Zhai Qingyun leisurely said, "Zhang Yin, the eldest daughter of Commander Zhang, right? I advise you not to be so rude. Neither I nor he are people you can provoke." Hearing this, Zhang Yin almost laughed out loud. What a joke, who would believe that? As she spoke, she fiercely stepped forward, intending to push Zhai Qingyun. But in the next second, her hand was firmly controlled by Zhai Qingyun. Zhai Qingyun's stunningly beautiful face remained as cold as ever. "Miss Zhang, why are you still so disobedient?" The strength in her grip was so great that Zhang Yin felt her wrist might snap. Sweat streamed down Zhang Yan's forehead uncontrollably, and in the next moment, she couldn't help but shout, it hurts so much. Let go of me. Otherwise, I'll make you pay for this." Zhai Qingyun did not withdraw. Instead, she increased her grip a bit more. Lu Zhou felt a bit of sympathy for Zhang Yin. Seriously, why provoke a military demon? The one who angered Zhai Qingyun before is probably already 6 feet under. When Zhang Yin was almost on the verge of fainting from the pain, Zhai Qingyun let out a cold snort and loosened her grip on the wrist. "Miss Zhang, don't challenge my limits. I have neither the mood nor the time to play such ridiculous games with you." After saying this, Zhai Qingyun strode forward, leaving Zhang Yin behind, clutching her wrist in pain, her face ashen. Damn that bitch. But she didn't dare to say it. She had no doubt that the other party really wanted to kill her. Just now, when Zhai Qingyun had made her move, Zhang Yin accidentally locked eyes with her for a few seconds. The coldness in her gaze made Zhang Yin tremble all over. People gathered around her immediately, whispering words of comfort. Lu Zhou noticed that among this group, Zhang Yin was quite a central figure. However, he did not slow his pace and continued to stride forward. Zhai Qingyun said nothing, pretending to comfort Zhang Yin a couple of times, and then everyone hurried to catch up with the two leading the way. This time coming to Liangshan, the exploration of information is indeed true. If they had not caught up with the destruction plan, their family members would definitely have high expectations for their actions, which would affect future inheritance. Bai Yun was sizing up the two people in front of him, feeling curious about their identities for the first time. Along the way, he noticed that when the surrounding people looked at these two, they would greet them. It seems that these two people hold at least a considerable status. Bai Yin repeatedly searched for some forgotten information, and soon he found a breakthrough. Because he personally heard someone among them inquire about the whereabouts of the researcher named Lu Zhou, asking where Professor Wei was. Bai Yun's mind flashed like lightning. He realized, this Lu Zhou is indeed a relative of Professor Wei. Wei Qingzhu, the genius researcher, is renowned far and wide. His value is so significant that, regardless of these generations, even if their mothers all died, they would not compare to the importance of Wei Qingzhu. This person is a decisive figure who can change the fate of Blue Star. Unexpectedly, the residents of Liangshan had sent the most cherished nephew of Professor Wei to receive them. Everyone knew that Wei Qingzhu was particularly concerned about his family. Anyone who harmed his family would surely not be spared. Thinking about Zhang Yan's rudeness earlier, Bai Yun felt a long-lost sense of fear. He is not yet the heir of the Bai family. If he angered Wei Qingzhu, his chances of inheriting the family business would be completely gone. Realizing this significance, Bai Yun immediately adjusted his attitude. As for Zhai Qingyun's background, he was indeed unclear, but with Lu Zhou as a cautionary tale, he did not dare to be disrespectful to Director Zhai. On the way, Bai Yun found an opportunity to inform Zhang Yin, who was still fuming. Zhang Yin felt stifled at first, but after hearing Bai Yun's explanation, she experienced fear for the first time in her life, feeling a lack of support. She couldn't imagine it. Although her family spoiled her, her importance was far from that of Professor Wei. Thinking further, Zhang Yin suddenly realized that she had just acted recklessly, and the feeling of suffocation dissipated, leaving only a vague sense of fear. Along the way, Without a leading figure stirring up trouble, they quickly arrived at their destination. This group had already experienced enough shock on their journey. Although this place gathers all the top scientists, isn't it just a bit too extravagant? Especially when they entered the control room. What greeted their eyes was an exceptionally large electronic screen. This screen even had a three-dimensional effect, and the current image displayed was the scene of the destruction plan. On the screen, the staff and special forces were constantly running around. After a long time, everyone could feel that these people seemed to be trying to drill out of the screen. When Baiyun saw this, he felt a slight sense of incongruity. It always felt like Liangshan Underground City wasn't just the legendary place that had advanced high-tech, but had a very low overall standard of living. Since arriving at Liangshan Underground City, they had constantly discovered that the public security here was very good. Several times, due to certain actions, they were warned by the military. The other party noted that they were from Jingdu and even gave them a lecture on Liangshan's laws and regulations, stating that if they made another mistake, their identity from Jingdu would not hold any weight here. Baiyun and his group felt quite stifled. To be honest, if it weren't for their family's mission to observe Liangshan, they would have long been unwilling to stay here. Here, power holds little privilege. Everyone must abide by the rules, with no room for leniency. Chapter 521, Abnormal Normalcy. Bai Ran had originally been quite proud, but after realizing how formidable Liangshan was, he became more low-key in the following days. The others weren't fools. Noticing that something was off, they obediently waited, not daring to say anything. In their spare time, they couldn't help but think a bit more. Would Liangshan directly report the matter of offending them to the capital? Everyone spent their time in the hospital anxiously. Bai Ran came back to his senses and turned to look at the control room in front of him. There were quite a few people in the control room, and at this moment, everyone was busy managing their own tasks. In Bai Ran's team, someone whispered in surprise, "Wow, this is so advanced. Look over there." After saying this, everyone's gaze fixed on a spaceship displayed on the screen. This spaceship is so large. If we were to build it at normal speed, it would take at least several decades to complete. Liangshan is terrifying. They have so many of these spaceships. After he finished speaking, the others looked closely and immediately realized that it was indeed the case. Lu Zhou was at the forefront and showed no reaction to the chatter of the group. Zhai Qingyun leaned against the side, his sharp eyes fixed on the screen. He murmured, "I hope it succeeds." Lu Zhou didn't respond, his peripheral vision constantly scanning the various flying vehicles around. In the control room, there were drones from the capital flying back and forth. They were to broadcast various details of Liangshan's destruction plan in real time, ensuring that Liangshan could make the right choices at the most critical moments. Of course, aside from this purpose, the most crucial goal was to closely monitor Liangshan to see if they would do anything beyond control. Song Wei was already aware of such matters, but at this critical juncture concerning Blue Star survival, he had no time to care about the thoughts of the forces in the capital. The engineering technicians repeatedly checked, and then Zheng Ji reported, "Report to Director Song, all systems are qualified and ready to ignite." Soon, this statement acted like a fuse, and immediately, several dozen engineers reported in unison. Lu Zhou raised his head, and through the giant screen, he could see the spaceship on the opposite side had gathered its energy and was preparing for launch. Everyone pressed themselves tightly against their seats, waiting for Song Wei's command. After listening to all the reports, Song Wei spoke in a deep, cold voice. "Ignite!" Boom, boom, boom. Just a second after he spoke, these spaceships produced an indescribably strange sound. Lu Zhou felt it was akin to the sound of gas being released when a gas canister is opened. After that sound passed, it was quickly drowned out by a massive noise. At the moment the spaceships took off, the energy was fully charged, and the powerful sound of energy being expelled shocked everyone, making their ears tingle. Lu Zhou silently covered his ears. The sound of the live broadcast was already so loud, he couldn't imagine how deafening it would be on site. Bai Ran hurriedly covered his ears, his mouth agape in shock, unable to close it for a long time. Dozens of massive spaceships successfully ascended into the sky. These spaceships left trails of exhaust in the air. The footage was rapidly ascending. The soldiers piloting the spaceships were now tightly gripping their lips and teeth, desperately controlling their bodies and battling against the pressure. Lu Zhou could feel in an instant. Perhaps the feeling he experienced when he dived alone into the depths of the ocean was similar to what the soldiers were feeling now. Moreover, he and Song Wei had both gone up before. Even though a long time had passed, Lu Zhou could still recall that discomforting sensation that made his heart tremble. That feeling was like someone suffocating the heart with a plastic bag, and then smashing it repeatedly with a heavy hammer. In the scene, the soldiers firmly controlled the command console, and soon, good news was relayed back. Report, we have successfully escaped the gravitational pull and are now gradually approaching the destination. Since everyone realized that the so-called Fall Sun was a surveillance instrument manipulated by a creator, all subsequent missions had referred to it as the destination. Continue advancing. First use Plan A. This mission was extremely important. Song Wei fixed his gaze on the screen and calmly commanded. After the spaceship broke free from the gravitational pull, it was unclear how much time had passed, but they finally arrived at the closest point to the destination. At that moment, the entire scene suddenly changed. Lu Zhou looked in astonishment at the red hue appearing before his eyes. It was huge and bright. Lu Zhou's first impression was of this striking color. After the initial shock, the spaceship immediately adjusted its position and also changed the angle of the display. With the change in angle, the appearance of the fall sun began to alter as well. It transitioned from a bright red, dazzling color to a bizarre shade of red. During the simulation of the destruction mission, everyone had discussed the temperature of this surveillance instrument. If this false sun truly possessed the temperature of a real sun, how should they respond? This was a very tricky problem. The sun's high temperature could render all heat-resistant materials ineffective. After much discussion, everyone ultimately agreed that they should equip the spaceship with the most heat-resistant materials possible. If the opponent's surveillance instrument really had an extremely high temperature, then any plan they had would likely be futile. To say the least, up until now, humanity had not found any material that could withstand the sun's temperature. Everyone understood this well. If this hypothesis were to hold true, then saving Blue Star would be a doomed mission. If one does not attempt, how could they know whether it's useful or not? This was the consensus among all. The soldiers responsible for this mission also understood this matter. Faced with the enormous and terrifying sun, he fell into a state of fear. Uncertain of how to proceed, he inexplicably felt a surge of fear in his heart. It was not a fear of death, but an inexpressible fear of the entire world. However, this thought only appeared for a moment. In the next second, this soldier had already started his mission. The first step was to test the surface temperature of the surveillance instrument. Soon, a small, separate unmanned pod flew out from the spaceship. This device approached the surveillance instrument slowly. In order to avoid detection, it employed various stealth methods. It was unclear which method worked, but the opponent seemed to have noticed nothing unusual. Seeing the surveillance instrument showing no signs of movement, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The unmanned pod slightly increased its speed, and when it arrived near the surveillance instrument, it began to transmit temperature readings. The unmanned pod had been pre-programmed with temperature measurement systems during its design. At this moment, everyone quietly watched the screen, eager to see the results. Soon, an astonishing message was relayed back. Chapter 522, Flat Fake Sun. The monitored surface temperature was only a mere 40 degrees. This is abnormal. Everyone had prepared for the temperature readings to be in the thousands or even tens of thousands, but no one expected it to be so low. Not to mention the disbelief of the observers. Even the soldiers on the mission were skeptical and continued to let the machine probe. But the result was fixed. It still showed those temperatures. Song Wei felt a sense of unease in his heart. But the current situation left no room for alternatives. He quietly signaled for the team to continue executing the plan. In the footage, the soldiers retracted the unmanned capsule and directly opened the cannon. In order to ensure a successful strike, they brought out the most powerful means they had researched: a shaped charge bomb, a single bomb capable of destroying half a planet. The reason Song Wei dared to use this plan was mainly due to the distance of the fake sun from Blue Star. Even large-scale bomb usage wouldn't impact Blue Star at all. The spaceship revealed its dark cannon mouth, and then a flash of light quickly shot towards the fake sun, emitting an eerie red glow. Boom! The fake sun emitted a deep, muffled sound. It was as if the shell had struck something solid. Immediately after, there was no explosion. No sound returned. It was as if the fake sun had absorbed the bomb. Song Wei instinctively felt something was wrong. A fleeting suspicion raced through his mind, but before he could grasp it, his team encountered trouble. Inside the spaceship, the screen turned blood red. Warning, warning, a high-energy reaction is rapidly approaching the spaceship. Please activate the defense system immediately. The alarm on the spaceship blared like a death knell, its beeping echoing throughout the craft. Because the imagery was particularly realistic, Lu Zhou even felt like he was in a crashing spaceship. The group was so frightened that their faces turned pale. He wanted to step outside for some air, but thought of home and held back his impulse, standing still. Zhai Qingyun stood upright, his eyes bright with astonishment. The spaceship immediately activated its protective shield, and almost in the next millisecond, a violent shockwave rattled everyone inside the ship. The pilot in the cockpit paused for a moment, and then the screen displayed a series of red warning bars. Lu Zhou quickly glanced over. Every single one indicated damage to various parts of the spaceship. At this moment, Song Wei finally grasped the thought that had crossed his mind earlier. The monitoring system, it could actually reflect damage. No one on the other side didn't need any high temperatures to force their approach. It was precisely because they had adopted this reflective defense measure that they were so confident. Realizing this possibility, Song Wei urgently halted the plan. However, due to the shock from the bomb, the spaceship sustained severe damage. This spaceship is lost. It can no longer be used. The bomb not only destroyed the spaceship, but all the crew who hadn't entered the emergency escape pod were killed in the explosion. Out of 80 people on the spacecraft, over 50 had already died. A mere test resulted in such significant losses. The surviving pilot was quickly reporting the situation. Report to Commander Song. The entire spaceship has suffered massive damage. We have discovered that the target possesses a reflective tracking system. We could have completely avoided the bomb's trajectory, but the bomb suddenly turned and caused tremendous damage to the side of the spaceship. The current number of survivors is 34, and the situation is uncertain. The entire spaceship's systems are malfunctioning. We request rescue. One encounter, and so many people died. After days of smooth sailing, in the first few minutes of starting the confrontation, Song Wei felt a sense of helplessness rising rapidly. These pilots and engineers are the most precious talents, yet they are dying so lightly. Song Wei's heart was bleeding. Retreat. Suspend the use of large-scale destructive weapons, and send out the reconnaissance pod to investigate. The other side immediately agreed, while the few ships that had not been attacked were slowly opening their hatches to send personnel to investigate the other side's monitoring device. As for the ship that had been blown to pieces, it was docking with one of the other ships. The survivors were rapidly evacuating, including connecting to the cargo hold and fuel storage for energy transfer. Before the energy transfer was completed, the ship emitted a loud humming sound, and then the entire vessel began to radiate heat. It's going to explode. The rescue ship quickly retreated. Just as they left the danger zone, they saw the ship glow red, and the red flames suddenly turned into ice-blue flames. These flames emitted a kind of explosive sound, and then sparks scattered everywhere. With a loud bang, it exploded into countless fragments like fireworks. These fragments did not last long. Almost in an instant, they scattered into fine particles like sand. From the time they started on the monitoring device, the ship self-destructed and perished, and it all happened in just a brief 10 minutes. At first, everyone felt somewhat assured, but now that sense of assurance dissipated as quickly as it had come. Is the opponent really like this? The reconnaissance pod was rapidly approaching the monitoring device, and as it got closer, they realized the unbelievable nature of this monitoring device. At first, everything seemed normal. A huge red sphere radiating heat. But as the pilot and the reconnaissance pod continued to fly forward, they suddenly found that the red sphere had vanished. Vanished? Impossible. How could such a large object just disappear? The pilot controlling the reconnaissance pod, Chun Yu, quickly activated his brain, thinking divergently. Could it have entered another space-time? For instance, after crossing the fake sun, would they enter another time and space? But soon, this hypothesis was overturned. When he turned back, he could still see his companion who had not yet come over. It's not a spatial issue, so what is it? Before he could send a message to his companion, he received a shocking message. Chinyu, what's wrong? Is there a problem ahead? Why aren't you moving forward? From his teammate's perspective, it was strange. The reconnaissance pod was hovering above the fake sun, yet it remained still. Apart from the unknown danger ahead, there was no reasonable explanation. For the first time, Chinyu felt a chill run down his back, as if he was thinking about something and quickly took a step back. The fiery, strange, heat-radiating fake sun still existed. One step forward, and it disappeared. Chinyu suddenly felt confused. Everyone thought this fake sun was a fiery, heat-emitting sphere. It was indeed round without a doubt, but this thing was flat. How to put it? It was as if someone had flattened a round piece of red modeling clay. Chapter 523, The Right Choice. Chinyu felt a complex mix of emotions. Although he remained relatively calm in his heart about the situation, seeing it with his own eyes was still shocking. The surveillance camera showed what appeared to be a fake sun had been compressed into a particularly thin slice, making it almost unrecognizable. Unless one looked closely, they could only see a thin red line. Soon, Chinyu's teammates caught up with him. When they saw the scene before them, their eyes went wide in shock. The impact of this scene was truly overwhelming. Before long, this information was sent to the top. Song Wei stared at the bizarre image, deep in thought about the next course of action. Lu Zhou was equally stunned. No one at the scene knew what was going on. Everyone cautiously observed the flattened fake sun. After watching for a while, Song Wei coldly said, "Activate Plan B." Plan B required the use of corrosive liquid for the attack. To prevent receiving reflective damage again, this time the military only sent unmanned drones to execute the mission. The probe craft responsible for scouting temporarily left, while the unmanned drones swiftly flew to the target area. The time to launch the corrosive missile came quickly. In no time, a bomb filled with potent corrosive solution was launched. The moment the bomb flew out, almost everyone widened their eyes, eager to closely observe the power of this corrosive munition. In fact, the bomb did prove effective. It detonated on the flattened sun, and soon blackened spots appeared, with the red fading away. Surprisingly, the rate of its collapse was extremely fast. Song Wei initially thought this would be a difficult struggle, but no one expected that the fake sun would collapse like a piece of paper corroded by sulfuric acid, with the yellowed core of the sun crazily shrinking inward. When Lu Zhou saw this, he felt his hair stand on end. This scene was hard to describe, but it certainly left a deep impression. After the fake sun completely collapsed, everyone could finally see that there seemed to be something at its center. Due to the distance, the probe craft took a look inside. But just that glance made everyone's scalp tingle. Inside was just a piece of paper. "Did you destroy the surveillance camera? Looks like I underestimated you, huh? Anyway, you still have a chance to win." This piece of paper, although so small, was clearly readable to everyone present. At that moment, alarms blared in Song Wei's mind. His sixth sense warned him of danger. Not only Song Wei, but also Lu Zhou and Zhang Jiahao, who were watching the scene below, felt a sudden surge of unease. The unease came rapidly, but it was the most intense they had ever experienced in history. Quick, retreat, and then blow up the target. Another voice immediately came from the control room. Song-wei, go investigate that area. This meant to completely stop the other party's actions. Song-wei gritted his teeth and said, "No, it's dangerous." As he spoke, the reactions of the pilots on the screen were swift. They had all retreated from the ship's interior. At the same time, several attack drones whizzed out. Byran was anxious. As a dog of the capital, he had to take action. He immediately stepped forward to reprimand Song-wei. "Director Song, you can't be so dictatorial. This thing should have research value. By destroying it so lightly, we humans are losing our chance for survival." Byran finally got spirited. He had previously refrained from provoking the other side due to orders from the capital, but now it seemed that the capital was completely at odds with him. Moreover, Song-wei appeared resolute, firmly sticking to his opinion. Song-wei didn't even raise an eyebrow. Two soldiers beside him with stern faces approached and restrained Byran, who felt his legs weaken and stammered, "What do you mean by that?" "Mr. Bai, please be quiet. If you continue speaking, we will ask you to leave immediately." The threat from the two made Byran's face turn pale, while Song-wei fixed his gaze on the screen. The drones had started dropping bombs. Their speed was astonishing, and the bombs they dropped completely obliterated the target. Strangely, the target had previously shown reflective capabilities, but now it didn't. Lu Zhou thought for a moment and realized. The fake sun was originally a complete structure, which was why it had reflective properties. Now, because the fake sun had been corroded, the complete structure had developed vulnerabilities, allowing the bombs to effectively attack. Thinking of this, Lu Zhou suddenly realized that if it hadn't been for the acidic liquid from the beetles at that time, this plan would not have succeeded. Recalling the events that had transpired, Lu Zhou was astonished to discover that everything from the beginning to now was interconnected. It was as if someone had preset the route for him. As long as he followed it, everything would fall into place. On the screen, it appeared that there was temporarily no danger, but the feeling of anxiety in Lu Zhou could no longer be suppressed. Seeing that there was no immediate danger, Byran and his group from the capital began to shout and blame Song-wei for not obeying the commands from the capital. This group even wanted to escort Song-wei back to the capital to face a military court. "Song-wei, your reckless destruction of the target has caused a data leak. After the mission is completed, you must come to the capital with the delegation for this matter is serious." In the monitoring room, the high-ranking officials from the capital looked somewhat angry. They were angry that their pet dog wasn't listening anymore. Not only did it want to bite their children, but it had also learned to bare its teeth at them. However, in response to them, there was a thunderous noise. Before anyone could say anything, the screen was filled with a blinding red light. The sound persisted for quite a while. Song-wei pressed down the earpiece, trying to communicate with the pilots on the other side, but he couldn't establish contact for the moment. As the red light gradually faded, communications began to resume. The pilots coughed a few times and immediately forced themselves to get back into the situation. "Report, leader. The target suddenly emitted a violent red light. All drones within 100 meters of the target have been completely dissolved. We have successfully evacuated, awaiting your next instructions." The pilots were also filled with a sense of lingering fear. Fortunately, Director Song had ordered them to retreat quickly. Otherwise, based on previous situations, they would have continued to linger in the vicinity because they had to enter the target to investigate. If they had wasted time, they definitely wouldn't have been able to retreat from that area. Song-wei's tense expression eased a little. In the monitoring room, the aggressive high-ranking officials from the capital now seemed to have been rendered speechless, not knowing what to say. Chapter 524, Fragmented and Disrupted. Bai Huan felt a bit dazed and secretly cursed Song-wei for having such good luck. At this moment, however, Song-wei remained calm. "Everyone, check the entire area for any abnormalities. If there are none, return immediately." "Yes, leader," the pilots responded and began to scan the vicinity. Once it was confirmed that the danger had been eliminated and the target was gone, they piloted the spaceship back toward Blue Star. This live broadcast was not only being watched by the high-ranking officials of Huagua, but also by various other powerful nations, employing various means to monitor this operation. They thought it would be a tough nut to crack, but no one expected that it would be so easily resolved. In the end, only about 50 people had died in this operation. For them, it was far easier than they had imagined. Seeing this, foreign nations quickly realized the advanced military technology and spacecraft that Huagua possessed. Previously, when they sent scientists over, Huagua's compensation was the purification of nuclear-contaminated land. Now it seemed that they had underestimated the value of what they had received. Foreign officials began plotting, thinking about how to prise open Huagua's secrets, eager to see if there were any cracks in their defenses. They couldn't wait to share technology with Huagua. After the spaceship returned perfectly, Song Wei stood up and carefully observed them. The soldiers on the screen also saw Song Wei standing up. They solemnly extended their hands and bowed toward Song Wei. Song Wei felt a pang in his chest. Humanity's first battle against the Creator had finally begun to resist. He slowly raised his hand and returned a salute to these heroes. The atmosphere was solemn, and no one dared to interrupt this moment. As for Bai Huan and the others, they had long been controlled, and now they didn't dare to move, appearing quite comical. Meanwhile, in the capital, the technicians had already cut off the audio feed. Lu Zhou, Wei Qingzhu, and Zhang Jiahao raised their heads, silently remembering this moment. Blue Star's first resistance had begun. Even Lu Zhou hadn't anticipated that the plan would go so smoothly. It could be considered a minimal cost for a significant breakthrough in resistance. Although the so-called notes left by the Creator made people uncomfortable, the truth was that they had indeed managed to resist. Once the screen feed was cut off, the engineers and technicians responsible for the spacecraft began assessing the damage and properly handling the ground tasks. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Song Wei furrowed his brow. He had already started considering infiltrating underground to conduct the first round of exploration. After all, with the monitoring systems having been dismantled, the next step was to expedite the exploration of the heart beneath the lake. Additionally, with the current abundance of military equipment and energy, and the fact that 2 submarines had already been completed, it made no sense to continue prolonging the plan. Song Wei made his decisions quickly, almost in an instant, finalizing the subsequent tasks. At this moment in the control room, everyone looked relieved. With the eyes removed, everyone felt considerably lighter. After a long time of being controlled, Song Wei finally remembered Bai Huan and the others. He approached this group of people, not showing them any good expressions. "You must be scared, right? Just go back and rest," Song Wei quickly said. Bai Ran seemed to want to say something, but Song Wei didn't give him the chance and turned to leave. Following behind Song Wei, many core members left one after another. Zhai Qingyun, who had gone from being worried at first to relax later, now knew she couldn't just leave casually. At the very least, she needed to ensure that someone accompanied these second-generation members back. When Lu Zhou went out, he coincidentally left the building with Director Zhai. This time, in addition to the 2 of them, there were also Wei Qingzhu and Zhang Jiazhua. The 3 of them weren't very familiar with Director Zhai, and as they walked, the atmosphere among the 4 was quite silent. After walking for a short distance, Director Zhai turned a corner and left their sight. Once they confirmed that Director Zhai had left, Zhang Jiazhua began to thump his chest, his face full of lingering fear. "Wow, didn't you all feel that Director Zhai had a particularly intimidating aura?" Lu Zhou agreed somewhat, while Wei Qingzhu shook his head in confusion. Zhang Jiazhua pondered for a moment and realized that Director Zhai hadn't been particularly cold and unfeeling in front of Professor Wei. At this point, they didn't say much more and quickly followed behind to return to the laboratory. Lu Zhou, however, noticed something unusual. Song Wei had strong opinions about the capital and had indeed defied the capital's orders during the event. Regardless of whether Song Wei's actions were correct or not, saving so many pilots' lives, in the eyes of the higher-ups, Song Wei was no longer a compliant dog. Lu Zhou felt conflicted inside. He could see that Song Wei was definitely not going to be like in his previous life, where he lost his humanity for the T-34 material. Those events must have been orchestrated by people from the capital. However, if Song Wei were to be punished by the capital, would his family be in danger? Although Wei Qingzhu was now a genius researcher, who could guarantee that they wouldn't be dealing with a tiger, and when would they have to face the consequences? Lu Zhou's mind was a bit chaotic, but at that moment, the gem that had been resonating inside him, which he had previously been able to ignore, suddenly emitted a dazzling light. The brilliance startled Lu Zhou, causing him to shiver involuntarily. In this radiant light, Lu Zhou suddenly saw many things. At that time, Fengji had narrated the past to him, and now it all unfolded before his eyes. Lu Zhou witnessed the destruction of Fengji's planet and the people hurriedly leaving in spaceships. What surprised Lu Zhou was that the one piloting the spaceship was not Fengji. It was him. The person looked exactly like Lu Zhou, his expression full of pain, seemingly struggling against something. These images were disjointed, like fragments, swirling about and trying to escape from Lu Zhou's mind. Soon, within the images, Lu Zhou saw the man piloting the spaceship, the one who looked just like him, split apart. Then these fragments drilled into Blue Star. The images wildly jumped around, and a long string of deep blue data flickered in Lu Zhou's eyes, rendering him stiff like a robot. Zhang Jiazhua was the first to react. He didn't see the data torrent in Lu Zhou's eyes. He only noticed Lu Zhou suddenly stop in his tracks. Just as he wanted to ask a couple of questions, he saw Lu Zhou collapse straight to the ground. Zhang Jiazhua was taken aback, immediately squatting down, his tone urgent as he called out, "Lu Zhou? Lu Zhou, what happened to you?" Wei Qingzhu realized at this moment that Lu Zhou had already passed out on the ground. Lu Zhou's consciousness was completely gone. He saw many things, and then realized that the gem resonating inside him was actually his true heart, while a part of his consciousness had split off and entered Wei Qingzhu's body, surpassing the sixth sense, and also entered Zhang Jiazhua's body. These three parts had converged into a complete Lu Zhou. Chapter 525, I Am the One. The new information hit Lu Zhou's mind like a bomb, leaving him dizzy. He suddenly understood why Fengji was so eager to obtain that transparent gem. Fengji was the foreign entity invading the system, while he had always held the control authority of the spaceship. As for the things Fengji said earlier, they were indeed true. It was just that the roles had reversed, with Lu Zhou becoming the subject instead. Lu Zhou's consciousness drifted through the vast sea of awareness. He had been perplexed before as to why his uncle was so extraordinary, able to analyze and solve anything he brought back. Now it seemed reasonable, as that fragment was inherently adept at understanding the various materials on the spaceship, being part of Lu Zhou's brain. As for the Zhang family's sudden appearance of a sixth sense, as well as his own occasional possession of an absolute sixth sense, it turned out to be remnants of something that once belonged to him. Lu Zhou felt as if he had been dreaming, in which he had come to know his true identity. Indeed, as Fengji had said, his planet was destroyed, leaving him all alone. At that time, Fengji was designed to prevent him from losing control of the system. Now that this system had developed its own consciousness, it sought to devour Lu Zhou's absolute control over the spaceship. Fengji's feelings toward Lu Zhou were complex. She needed Lu Zhou to help her gain power, but couldn't let him know the truth. No wonder Fengji's attitude toward him had seemed so strange back then. As Lu Zhou pondered, many of the unreasonable aspects from before began to connect in his mind. Since he had already remembered so much, the first thing to do was to ensure Fengji could no longer maintain control over the spaceship. Thinking about that giant spaceship, a wave of sorrow and sadness rose within Lu Zhou. All his kin were dead, yet his fragments had found so many kin on Blue Star. Lu Zhou didn't hesitate for long. In his view, regardless of which fragment materialized as his true self, they were all part of a shared destiny. Lu Zhou no longer wanted to drift alone in the universe for millions of years. He had wandered too long, causing his mental state to become unstable, allowing Feng Zhi to take advantage of the situation and invade the spaceship system. He slowly opened his eyes, and with just a single thought, he brought Feng Zhi before him. Feng Zhi showed no fear. Instead, she smiled and said, "You figured it out? Well, go ahead, kill me." Lu Zhou's eyes gathered countless streams of data as he sighed softly. "Feng Zhi, I won't kill you, but you will forever be under my control." Feng Zhi was taken aback. "Why not destroy me?" Lu Zhou's thoughts were slow. "You've accompanied me for far too long, for billions of years. Even if you betrayed me, I wouldn't want to kill you. If I did, I fear I would forget the past. Let's put it this way. You are like an anchor point for my memories." Feng Zhi quietly stared at Lu Zhou, and for a long time, she couldn't speak again. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou had unknowingly trapped her in a solid place using his thoughts. After he dealt with the situation in the sea of consciousness, he slowly opened his eyes. What greeted him was a clean white room, with the scent of disinfectant in the air. A hospital. Before he could fully wake up, Lu Zhou heard a joyful voice beside him. "Xiao Zhou? Xiao Zhou, you're awake. Xiao Zhou, you scared me to death." Lu Zhou slowly sat up. Lu Zhou was embraced by his parents, both crying and laughing, while Zhang Jiahao, who was standing nearby, silently reddened his eyes. Wei Qingzhu and his aunt also had red eyes. "You fainted for 3 days. You really scared us to death," his aunt said, her eyes unknowingly filling with tears again. Looking at the family surrounding him, Lu Zhou suddenly felt a deep sense of happiness. Here, he had family. Lu Zhou spent about 10 days recuperating. During those days, everyone was very busy. However, his dad and mom specifically took leave from work to stay by Lu Zhou's side and care for him. Lu Zhou insisted several times that it wasn't necessary, but they were unwilling to leave him alone at home. With no other choice, the three of them stayed together. Meanwhile, the first underwater exploration had already begun. Song Wei personally managed this mission, and Lu Zhou struggled to go see what was happening. His parents, with no other choice, could only take him along. Because this plan had started relatively early, the people from Kyoto hadn't had time to arrive yet, so they came along as well. Their main goal was to obtain evidence against Song Wei, then rush back to Kyoto, and subsequently send reinforcements to deal with Song Wei. Once the diving mission started, Lu Zhou focused on the screen in front of him while also relaxing his mind, allowing his consciousness to roam inside the spaceship. As soon as his consciousness entered the spaceship, he was instantly amazed. What lay before him was an incredibly massive spaceship, vast enough to block out the sun. Lu Zhou looked at this gigantic spaceship, and in an instant, feelings of solitude washed over him again. He opened the spaceship's main door and discovered that the interior was very well planned. There were ecological zones, manufacturing zones, weaponry zones, research labs, living zones, and energy zones. In addition to these, there were also entertainment rooms and training rooms. After taking a look around, Lu Zhou realized that the spaceship was equipped with all kinds of functions. Not only could it sustain him and his family, but it could also support the entire underground city's population. However, Lu Zhou was only willing to accept being with his family and friends. He didn't welcome anyone else. During his exploration of the spaceship, he found that he could use all the weapons stored in the armory. Thus, Lu Zhou selected some powerful and easily replicable weapons and sent them to Song Wei. When Song Wei's men received help from the mysterious aliens, he was no longer as cautious as before. He realized he should trust the aliens more, as the people from Kyoto and he were both Blue Star people, citizens of China, but their hearts did not align. Sometimes, Song Wei would look at the guests from Kyoto and let out a silent sigh. Everyone thought he would betray them, but from the beginning to the end, Song Wei's heart had never changed. He just wanted to make this world more equitable, where there were no classes among people and all of humanity could achieve equality. But those people would not allow it. The content of the next plan flashed through his mind, and Song Wei's expression turned cold. The first exploration plan officially commenced. As for the second generation from Kyoto, they were all taken to the scene by Song Wei's men to observe. When Lu Zhou and his aunt arrived in the command room, they found that far fewer people were qualified to enter this time. Chapter 5:26, The Correct Path. Except for the top leaders of various projects, no one else had a chance. Among them, as soon as Lu Zhou entered, he saw that all the second-generation elites from Kyoto were also present. Lu Zhou's expression darkened for a moment as he quickly walked to his designated seat. It was at that moment that the screen lit up. This time, the screen was much smaller than the last. To save time, by the time they saw it, the submarine had already submerged and reached outside the glass dome. Song Wei quietly watched the screen before ordering to open fire and proceed. However, something shocking happened. The submarine silently penetrated the protective shield, and even without firing a shot, it entered. This unexpected turn of events stunned everyone. What the hell? Quick, get the submarine to send back information. Report, Commander. Our submarine, for some unknown reason, was able to directly penetrate the protective shield, and upon entering, the beetles have disappeared. When Song Wei heard this, his heart nearly stopped. Could it be that Blue Star truly is the king of luck? Such a thing could actually happen? He had thought that dealing with the beetles would be a troublesome matter, but who would have thought that they would just vanish? Thinking of this, Song Wei couldn't help but smile. Proceed with caution and investigate. The personnel responsible for this task readily agreed. After the military entered to check things out, they sent back news. We haven't found the crack yet, but we can confirm that all the beetles have indeed disappeared. The military temporarily remained stationed in place. Everyone was waiting for the appearance of that crack. Lu Zhou, while waiting, noticed that Chiron and others nearby were whispering to each other, as if discussing something quietly. Among the crowd, a woman in a wheelchair had half of her face shrouded in darkness. For no reason, Lu Zhou felt uncomfortable in his heart. Since the appearance of the crack was uncertain, many people gradually began to attend to their own affairs. Lu Zhou, along with the Zhang family and Wei Qingzhu, returned to their work area. It was here that they encountered Chiron and his group, who had come to observe. These individuals had an arrogant demeanor, weaving through the laboratory, occasionally interrupting the researchers' work and asking questions. In addition, they were filming the conditions inside the laboratory and whispering among themselves. As Lu Zhou frowned while passing by them, he seemed to catch bits of their conversation. Haha, how interesting. We actually filmed this thing. I believe that with it, Song Wei will definitely be punished. TSK. I wonder who will take over this place then. Hee. Besides Chiron, who else could it be? Only he's qualified. Their voices were rather low, but Lu Zhou had sharp hearing and could hear them clearly. To clarify what they were specifically saying, Lu Zhou walked to a corner and activated his invisibility. As he followed the group, he finally saw what they had filmed. It was photos of experimental subjects, along with some specific implementation books of idealism. The moment Lu Zhou saw the photos, he immediately recognized where these things came from. During the capture of the True God Church, Song Wei had led people inside. When Lu Zhou and the others rescued people and left, they had no idea what the others had discovered inside. Now it seemed that Song Wei had long since gotten his hands on some interesting items. However, judging by the attitude of these second-generation elites, it appeared that Song Wei had not reported this to Kyoto. Lu Zhou's expression suddenly turned grim. If this matter is true, then Song Wei will definitely be dealt with. The only way to prevent this from happening is to make these people completely forget what Tian has seen. However, Song Wei is a very cautious person. Would he be so reckless as to let these people discover these things? Could it be that Song Wei did it on purpose? If he did it on purpose, then what exactly does Song Wei want to achieve? Is he really looking to fall out with Kyoto completely? Lu Zhou frantically recalled the matter, and in the end, he could only feel that it was intentional on Song Wei's part. Remembering the evil deeds of those from Kyoto, a glimmer of killing intent flickered in Lu Zhou's pupils. Well then, why not send them another gift? Bai Jun was trembling with excitement after obtaining the evidence. When their group gathered together, they had whispered about these matters. After we finish exploring, we should return to Kyoto immediately. This stuff is too important. By June was bursting with enthusiasm, wishing he could fly back right away. With these items, his position as the heir of the Bai family was as good as set in stone. The others had no objections, as staying here was indeed uncomfortable. Time flew by, and about 10 days later, the rift opened. Lu Zhou, his uncle, and other key researchers were all taken over to see the situation. The second-generation figures from Kyoto naturally followed along. When everyone entered, their bodies stiffened. Upon entering, they discovered that the black line had cracked open a huge seam. At this moment, all sorts of chaotic objects were spilling out from within. The exploration team had already set off. The driver maneuvered skillfully through the dense garbage, maintaining a decent speed. The window of time for the rift to be open was only an hour and a half. They had to obtain intelligence quickly. The submarine nimbly avoided the debris, and after 20 minutes, they finally passed through layers of junk. The view suddenly opened up. Almost instantaneously, everyone could see the appearance of the world behind the rift. The sky was gray, and all around were piles of dense garbage. The camera focused on the surrounding trash, and everyone realized that the garbage was primarily made up of machinery, entirely useless discarded equipment. The surroundings were very dim, and through the screen, it seemed everyone could feel that oppressive atmosphere. The exploration vessel had already used infrared measurement and found that there were currently no living creatures here. Moreover, surprisingly, through this layer of rift, it became clear that they were not underwater. The air was very dry. The exploration team deployed a plane, flying low and using various stealth measures to avoid detection by the other side. When the pilot looked down, he discovered that the area they had emerged into was surrounded by hundreds of miles of garbage. There were no signs of human habitation. After measuring the pollution index, the instruments went wild and eventually malfunctioned. Everyone understood that the pollution index here was extremely high. When the plane reached the outer edge, the pilot was astonished to find clusters of high-rise buildings appearing. What was strange was that these high-rise buildings could hardly be described as high-tech products. To obtain more accurate information, the pilot had to get a bit closer. As he drew nearer, the camera was immediately filled with some text. These words were prominently displayed on the skyscrapers. Oppose the harvesting plan. Acquire greater rights. Federation D. Chapter 527. Counterkill. When everyone saw these few lines of text, their bodies, tensed up, finally arrived. It seemed that they had truly come to the place where the Creator resided. The pilot responsible for reconnaissance carefully controlled the aircraft, which emitted a very faint sound. To avoid detection, the pilot moved with utmost caution. From several kilometers high in the sky, the conditions of the city below were laid bare. What surprised everyone was that the figures slowly revealed in the images looked indistinguishable from humans. Moreover, it appeared that there was absolutely no sign of any potential adversaries in this city. These human beings were unarmed, resembling a mob. Due to time constraints, the pilot marked the location and quickly departed. Everyone who saw this scene furrowed their brows. They had no idea how large the opponent's living area was or how powerful their government's methods were. After all, a country capable of producing such advanced technology should not appear in such a state. The pilot successfully returned, while a number of submarines remained stationed below as permanent underwater units. Among them, 3 submarines were responsible for transporting energy and food to supply the underwater soldiers. Since there were only 3 hours available for exploration each month, everyone cherished this time. However, this meant that the exploration would inevitably be a long and arduous process. Lu Zhou had a relatively good mindset. Many scientists had resumed their normal work routine, while Song Wei was busy planning the next steps. Everyone's time was precious. Meanwhile, Bai Ran and his group, as guests from the capital, had already been in Liangshan for over a month. Coupled with the evidence they held regarding Song Wei, they were eager to return to report to the capital. These individuals had no hesitation. They first politely declined Song Wei's invitation to stay 2 more days, then quickly took a car to the train station. When the train arrived, Byran was so excited he was speechless, never expecting that this trip would be so smooth and effortless. Zheng Yin, on the other hand, was clinging to Byran, acting all clingy. The atmosphere within the group was lively, except for one woman in an electric wheelchair at the back. Zheng Yin occasionally glanced at Liang Lily and rolled her eyes in exasperation. Just look at her. What is she trying to show off with that look? Zheng Yan's sycophants immediately gathered around her, chatting about other amusing matters. Liang Lily clenched her fists, biting her lip until it bled, but her eyes remained unusually calm. The train had still not reached the station, yet for some reason, everyone felt a chill creeping in. I swear, did you all feel that? The air is so cool, it feels off. As this person spoke, they could almost feel goosebumps forming on their arms, even beneath their thick clothing. Someone immediately responded, I was just about to say that the temperature here at the train station is really low. Another person chimed in. What's so strange about it? Wasn't the temperature low when we arrived? Everyone laughed and didn't take the matter seriously. Liang Lily's lips curled into a strange smile, and she was unexpectedly dripping blood from her palm. But rather than flowing out, the blood was being consumed by a bizarre green creature. While everyone continued to chat, attempting to exchange playful banter, an unexpected change occurred. At that moment, the man was still speaking, but in the next second, a huge gash was torn open in his abdomen. The words he had started to say got stuck in his throat, and he looked down blankly, his eyes devoid of life. When he finally saw the irregular hole in his belly, he was completely stunned. In the next moment, he collapsed to the ground and began to convulse. After struggling for just a few seconds, he was dead. The person speaking to this man was Byran. His face was splattered with the other man's blood, and at that moment, his mind felt like it had been pressed on a pause button. He couldn't remember anything. By the time Byran regained his senses, he noticed that the people around him were standing in an extremely bizarre posture, heads down, bodies upright. No, he could see that their faces were filled with fear. What was going on? Byran turned with difficulty to see what had happened, but instead, he found his own body without a head. With a thunderous crash, Byran's thoughts completely collapsed. He was terrified and panicked. He had evidence of Song Wei's resistance, thinking that after this, his future would be bright. But who could have imagined that he would die here for no reason? Logically, Byran should have died long ago, but for some reason, during those few seconds of death, time passed so slowly that he had enough time to think about many things. Byran surveyed the scene and effortlessly found the real culprit behind it all, Liang Lily, who had a broken leg. She was surrounded by a low pressure, exuding a gloomy aura, while people around her continued to fall, yet she remained unharmed. Byran wanted to curse, to shout in frustration. He felt like he was doomed to bad luck. When he thought of Liang Lily, he could only remember that this woman had harmed Zheng Yin by breaking her leg. So stingy. Her family can regenerate limbs. Why kill him instead? But Byran understood that limb regeneration was precious and wouldn't be easily used on someone deemed unnecessary. Liang Lily was such a person, dispensable, a worthless life. But who would have thought that he would end up dead at the hands of someone like her? Byran died, filled with resentment, while Zheng Yin was still alive. She trembled in fear as Liang Lily approached, losing control of her bowels. Tears and snot mixed together, making her look extremely pathetic. Please, let me go. I can take you for surgery. I will give you a lot of things. I promise I will heal your leg. Zheng Yin stumbled and tried to run, but was abruptly stopped as an invisible force severed her legs. Blood sprayed out in an instant, and the excruciating pain nearly made her lose consciousness. Liang Lily cheerfully wheeled herself closer, her tone filled with hatred. Just die, Zheng Yan. You make me want to puke. Zheng Yan's eyes widened as she tried to say something, but in the next second, her throat was slashed. Blood gushed out like a fountain, soaking Liang Lily, who stood closest. Liang Lily laughed maniacally, like a true madwoman. Earlier, under the pretense of visiting the laboratory, she had stolen a biological specimen, a biological mantis. Initially, just an egg, it could be awakened with the owner's blood, allowing them to command it to do anything. Liang Lily believed that the luckiest thing that had happened to her in her 20-something years of life was that she had smoothly obtained this egg. Chapter 528, A Reasonable Accident. When she finally arrived at the remote and secluded train station, she allowed the mantis to take action and kill those people. As for whether the people from Kyoto would come looking for her afterward, or what the families of those elite members from Kyoto might do to her family, none of that concerned her at all. After all, she was merely the least significant member of her family, a dirty rat who had to ingratiate herself with those elite members to gain a little bit of weak influence. Liang Lily suddenly laughed, her laughter manic and deranged. By the time the Liangshan guard came over, she was already in a crazy state. The military had to report this incident thoroughly to their superiors, and it would eventually be reported to Kyoto as well. So Liang Lily had to be taken back as a prisoner. Just as the military was about to approach Liang Lily, they noticed that the woman spat out a large mouthful of blood, her eyes becoming vacant and lifeless, dying right there in her wheelchair. The others reacted quickly, using biological pheromones to track the mantis, and then they were left in disbelief. Why did Liang Lily commit suicide? Mantis won't harm its master, you know. Someone answered, maybe it's because she was afraid of retaliation from those people in Kyoto. Sometimes it's better to be dead than alive. Once these words were spoken, many people found them quite reasonable. Indeed, the families of those elite members from Kyoto had powerful backgrounds, and if Liang Lily had been taken to Kyoto, they surely wouldn't let her die easily. Instead, they would torture her severely. As the military cleaned up the aftermath, the train tooted as it arrived at the station. When the train staff carefully waited for those elite members to board, they discovered that all of them were dead. The train conductor felt it was unbelievable and, after understanding some details, quickly pieced together the cause and effect of the situation. He felt no sorrow. On the contrary, he felt lucky. Xiao Tao had been living in fear during this time. Even though the other party had not yet sent anyone to deal with her, everyone knew that it was only a matter of time before it would come. For others, Xiao Tao's situation was too trivial. No one would risk offending Kyoto to stand up for her. However, no one had expected that all those people would end up dead. When Xiao Tao learned about this, she trembled all over. Happiness, fear, excitement, and other emotions surged within her. The train conductor was very relieved, saying, being a good person has its benefits. Look, Xiao Tao's situation seems like heaven is helping her. Other crew members chimed in, and Xiao Tao muddled through a couple of responses before turning back to her duties. But her heart was not at peace. Soon, the military brought this news back. When Song Wei learned of it, he instructed his subordinates to send the surveillance footage and details of the incident to Kyoto, while he himself curled his lips into a cold, cruel smile. It was just as he had imagined. When Kyoto received the news, the families of those elite members initially did not believe it. However, when the videos were retrieved, their eyes reddened, and they could only convince themselves to believe it. In less than a day, a flurry of complaints reached the higher-ups, all coming from the families of those deceased. They believed that Song Wei had not managed the laboratory well, which led to such disastrous consequences. As for the woman who had truly caused their children's deaths, her family had long been dealt with by their united efforts. The situation is still tense between them. After the apocalypse, the family has suffered too many deaths and injuries. They are now too old and desperately need children to inherit the family business. Suddenly losing a child has completely disrupted their plans. The higher-ups had a call with Song Wei, and in the end, the two parties parted ways unhappily. At this moment, the higher-ups in Kyoto were already quite dissatisfied, but Song Wei didn't say anything overly radical. He simply explained the importance and necessity of his current operations, leaving the other side unable to pursue accountability further. When Lu Zhou learned this news, he was initially shocked, and then almost burst out laughing. Song Wei is really clever, He wants to kill someone, and he's using someone else's hand to do it. This way, the power players in Kyoto can only say that he's not handling things properly, but no one can accuse him of having long-term premeditated plans. As Lu Zhou understood the ins and outs of the situation, he couldn't help but marvel. Song Wei's choice of person was indeed very appropriate. It makes sense that those who bully others will ultimately be bullied in return. Considering that the subsequent plans still require Song Wei, the Kyoto side has no choice but to back down. The exploration of the creator world continues. The longer the exploration lasts, the more astonishing it becomes. According to the exploration team, the world over there is not qualitatively different from the human world. Time flows the same way, and human offensive capabilities are also the same. The language in this world is completely consistent with what the scientists discovered back then. The people sent over are all proficient in the other side's language. In order to explore more areas, these explorers voluntarily stayed in the creator's world for half a month, and only then did they take advantage of the opening of a rift to report back on their operations. The environment in the world where the creator resides is extremely harsh. Without protective clothing, humans cannot survive. Even an hour would cause them to melt into blood and water. After 3 months of exploration, the exploration team finally figured out the territory of the other side. The territory is divided into above ground and underground. The underground is the area where ordinary people live, with a total area roughly equivalent to the size of 3 provinces in Huagua. The above ground is where the upper class, or the so-called federal rulers, reside, which is only the size of a city. As for the ordinary people's area, the exploration team assessed their military strength. According to the assessment, the military strength of these ordinary people is very low, at most equivalent to the highest level of humanity before the apocalypse, and they're certainly not at a level that cannot be defeated. The people in the sky, however, are estimated to have military capabilities roughly equivalent to those of contemporary Huagua. To obtain this information, the exploration team suffered countless casualties. Even though it was a secret exploration, some people were still discovered and subsequently engaged in conflict with the local residents. To avoid leaving any incriminating evidence, each team member carried incendiary ammunition. If they found themselves in a situation from which they could not escape, they would blow up the ammunition and self-destruct. Fortunately, for now, the federal government in the creator world has not noticed any anomalies. Sometimes, when Lu Zhou reads about this, he even finds it unbelievable. In their world, if such a situation were to arise, it would certainly be quickly discovered, and the entire nation would mobilize to research these intruders and how these new world people operate. Not long after, new intelligence was transmitted. It turned out that in this world, there exists an inherent class conflict between the people on the ground and those in the sky. The people below frequently protest, claiming that they need human rights, while those above feel that the people below are asking for too much. Chapter 529, Sounding the Battle Alarm. Frequent skirmishes occur between the two factions, but due to the upper class having a harvesting plan that provided them with nutrients, their physical fitness improved significantly, reaching heights that the lower class could not hope to attain in 10 lifetimes. However, why did the Federation agree to allocate part of the benefits from the harvesting plan to these lower-class individuals over the past 2 years? It was because if the lower-class individuals' rebellion became increasingly intense, even though the upper class had excellent physical qualities, the lower class seemed completely unafraid. They would even resort to self-destruction, taking the lives of numerous upper-class citizens with them. The event that ignited this situation was the lower class's outbreak of strikes and protests. The upper class merely recruited some lower class individuals and took them to work in the skies. They thought these people would be grateful, but no one expected that these lower class individuals would directly self-destruct, taking the lives of thousands of upper class citizens with them. The Federation urgently called for a halt, and as a result, they had no choice but to promise the lower class a share of the benefits brought by the harvesting plan. The exploration team brought back many valuable items, and after discussions among everyone, They unanimously agreed that the primary target should be to blow up the control room of the opposing faction, as it contained all the details of the harvesting plan. In this world, the harvesting plan was extremely important. Even the rebel forces wouldn't casually destroy the factories involved in the harvesting plan. When the exploration team conveyed this information, Song Wei's expression was cold and indifferent. Lu Zhou listened carefully from the side. His eyes were filled with determination. This time, as a person from Blue Star, he would not allow himself to be outdone by these creators. The weapon engineering team spared no effort in continuing their frantic expansion. During this period, Song Wei thought of various ways to appease the Kyoto faction, managing to complete several projects under immense pressure. Kyoto soon discovered with horror that their control over the situation was gradually diminishing. For instance, many underground cities were growing dissatisfied with Kyoto's demands. They no longer followed Kyoto's plans in everything. These developments seemed inevitable. Human societal order was gradually loosening, and the suppressed nature of humanity would eventually be released. However, people from other places still held a certain awe for Song Wei. The strange situation was also noticed by the Lu family. Lu's father and mother even quietly discussed this matter with Lu Zhou, but could only sigh deeply in the end. What can we do? Can we, as small individuals, change these things? Instead of worrying about that, it was better to focus on whether the struggle against the creators could succeed. Lu Zhou softly reassured his father, "Don't worry, we will definitely win." He had already made up his mind that when the New World War broke out, he must intervene. He could not bear to watch another homeland be destroyed. He could no longer endure the solitude he had faced for so many years alone. Looking around, only Blue Star was connected to the world of the creators. Wasn't that a manifestation of fortune? As the exploration team continued to bring back more information, the group gradually understood the true nature of the enemy and found it absurd. With the added support of the door, the weapons and technology of Huagua had already surpassed that of the world where the creators resided. Song Wei calmly ordered further research, planning to strike against the enemy once everything stabilized. Meanwhile, the underground cities were developing rapidly. The underground city had already achieved self-sufficiency. Within the city, no one would go hungry. Here, everyone was equal. As long as they worked, they could live happily. After gaining overall control of the spaceship, Lu Zhou occasionally selected a few valuable items and sent them to his uncle or Song Wei. He hoped that Song Wei could make the underground city even better since he was an excellent manager. Soon, larger-scale, fully automated farms and weather control equipment emerged. The food shortage was completely resolved. Wei Qingzhu became busier, with many more tasks added to his workload. As for Lu Zhou's aunt and mother at the hospital, they continued to expand and began constructing a new hospital. As for Grandma Dan, she had long since retired. Although she had the T-34 to assist her, she looked exhausted and worn. There were many times when Lu Zhou feared that Grandma Dan would leave him. He searched through all the items on the spaceship and, to his dismay, found that apart from cryogenic technology, there was no other technology to extend Grandma Dan's life. Lu Zhou fell into a rare state of sadness. Others have more or less noticed that Granny Shan's health is deteriorating. However, she remains calm, seeming to be completely unaware of the changes her body is experiencing. Those around her dare not mention this matter anymore. Only she knows why she continues to stubbornly hold on to her failing body. She wants to see with her own eyes the day when they triumph over the Creator. Lu Zhou is very clever. After some guessing, he has figured out Granny Shan's intentions. He approaches her and expresses his desire to freeze her. Granny Shan wants to refuse, but seeing the hopeful eyes of those around her, she can only reluctantly agree. "If I am about to die, then let's do as you say." Aunt Lu wipes her tears and quietly nods. Time flies quickly. In the blink of an eye, 5 years have passed. The Blue Star has made full preparations. On this day, Lu Zhou personally witnessed several massive submarines entering the lake bed, all tightly anchored together, and the people inside were all excited. Meanwhile, Song Wei has personally gone to the battlefield. He says, "If I survive and return, I will continue to build our homeland. If I fail, please lead our compatriots to survive." He goes to this battle with the mindset of facing death. Lu Zhou also joins the battlefield. He wants to protect this new home as well. Aunt Lu and Uncle Lu look at Lu Zhou's face, tears streaming down, knowing that this is Lu Zhou's choice, and it is also the fate he must fulfill. Since mastering the spaceship, Lu Zhou has not hidden the truth from his parents, but has told them everything. The two remain silent, knowing that when Lu Zhou reaches his final destination, he will resolutely head to the battlefield. Time passes quickly, and before they know it, they have little time left to see Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou bravely holds back his sadness and waves goodbye to his family, softly murmuring, "When I succeed, I never want to return to the past." The next day, several fighter jets rush into the new territory. They aim at their targets and launch bombs. When tens of thousands of bullets are shot out, the local residents don't even pause their daily activities. What's the big deal? It's common for resistance forces to throw bombs into the air, but none have ever been able to break through the enemy's defenses. But this time is different. Almost the moment the shells hit the shield shatters like the most fragile glass, blown to smithereens. The fragments float and scatter in the air. Song Wei signals the soldiers to continue. They then throw bomb after bomb towards the control room. The remaining bombs are thrown into other open areas in the sky. Soon, the enemy reacts and is drawn into a fierce battle. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. Although Blue Star's weapons are stronger than the enemy's, it is puzzling that they have not yet destroyed the enemy's control room. After Lu Zhou personally joins the battlefield, the brutality of the war becomes evident. Just a second ago, his teammates were chatting, and the next moment, they could be blown into a mist of blood. Lu Zhou watches helplessly as countless people die, while many others get back up and continue fighting. He repeatedly charges into battle, striking the enemy, but puzzled by the resilience of the control room. This war has dragged on too long, and Lu Zhou suddenly feels a strong desire to go home. He misses his family so much. Chapter 530, Striving for a Beautiful World. Alongside him in the battle was the Zhang family, but they were in logistics. Occasionally, when they met, they would exchange a few words, but most of the time, they were busy with their own tasks. Soon, Song Wei discovered something amiss with the main control. To destroy this target point, he had to resort to self-detonation methods. A soldier personally carried the most powerful bomb and controlled the detonation. After using human lives as a base for several attempts, the result was that they could only destroy the surrounding areas, while the most critical part remained completely unharmed. At this moment, Feng Zhi spoke up. "That place is designed very precisely. Only our planet's weapons can destroy it. However, the spaceship will be crippled 9 out of 10 times." Just when they felt hopeless, Lu Zhou heard these words. He was surprised by Feng Zhi's statement and subconsciously wanted to distrust her, but in reality, he still proceeded with her suggestion. When the enemy's control room was successfully blown open, Lu Zhou smiled for the first time in a long while. Finally, they had tackled the toughest challenge. The hardest bone to chew had been dealt with, and the rest would be easier. "Thank you, Feng Zhi." Lu Zhou sincerely expressed his gratitude, but realized no one responded to him. It was as if the other party had never existed. Lu Zhou thought Feng Zhi was throwing a minor tantrum, but after half a month, then a month passed, he began to feel anxious. "Feng Zhi? Feng Zhi?" No response. Lu Zhou frantically searched for the functional parts of the spaceship, but indeed, Feng Zhi had vanished. When Lu Zhou finally found a message from Feng Zhi, it was a recording she left behind. Her voice was sly. "If one day you can't find me, it means I've completely disappeared. I've already calculated this future in advance. You don't need to thank me. Instead, thank the you who spare my life back then." Lu Zhou suddenly felt a wave of bitterness wash over him, his heart swelling with emotions about to burst. A thick feeling of sourness spread throughout his body. After the control room exploded, the world suddenly became turbulent. A violent wind blew, and the ground shook violently. It was as if all natural disasters had emerged in an instant. Lu Zhou immediately sensed something was wrong, and Song Wei reacted even faster, shouting for everyone to regroup immediately. Quickly retreat. This place is becoming very dangerous. As Lu Zhou rushed towards the evacuation point, he turned back to look at this world, suddenly feeling as if it were experiencing the backlash of countless controlling forces. A myriad of natural disasters. Anyone who surpasses others will eventually be surpassed in return. The situation grew increasingly dire, and Lu Zhou rushed towards their goal. On the way, he rescued a companion whose aircraft was severely damaged, and the two of them fled together in one plane. When Lu Zhou arrived at the evacuation point, he found that most people had already retreated. They had returned to the garbage dump where they had started. Looking at the surrounding natural disasters, Song Wei felt overwhelmed. Quickly evacuate, or we'll all die here. It was clear that this place was on the brink of collapse. They couldn't afford to perish along with it. However, there were too many people, and even if everyone desperately tried to leave, in the end, some would inevitably be left behind. With death looming as a foregone conclusion, many officers insisted on letting Song Wei retreat first. Yet he did not leave. His gaze remained resolute. I want to stay here and fight until the last moment of my life. At this critical moment, Lu Zhou immediately activated the group teleportation skill. This group skill had not been used until now, and he wasn't sure if it could take everyone back. The skill required a minute to take effect, and he was uncertain if they could all return safely. While Song Wei was still arguing with the officers around him, he suddenly saw a flash in front of his eyes. The next second, he and his group found themselves inside the submarine. Everyone who participated in the battle. What the hell? Did we encounter a ghost? Song Wei didn't have time to speak. He frantically ran inside the submarine to check the crack. Sure enough, the crack had disappeared, as if it had never existed. Just then, Wangda and the weather team rushed out, their tone excited. Good news, the weather can now be predicted in real time. He had intended to report this to Song Wei via video, but when he saw the real person standing in front of him, as well as Lu Zhou behind him and a group of soldiers, he was instantly bewildered. They're back? Weren't they in that other world just 10 minutes ago? Although the soldiers were confused, they had already experienced so many strange things in between that they didn't care much about it now. As long as they were alive, there was hope. Song Wei, however, had to worry about more pressing matters and was extremely busy. Lu Zhou returned to the surface in a return pod. News had spread everywhere, and everyone knew that Blue Star had won. The streets were filled with joy. Lu Zhou ran back home like crazy. When he arrived, he first embraced his parents deeply and then immediately went to his grandmother's side. After hearing the good news, the old woman seemed to have been holding her breath and finally let it go. Lu Zhou had already anticipated this scene. With red eyes, he whispered, "Grandma, we succeeded. You can rest easy now. We'll wake you up when the time comes." Grandma's eyes were hazy, and her gaze swept over the surroundings, noticing many people she cared about. Wei Qingzhu, Tong Tong, Jiang Xiaolin, Lu Mom and Dad, Yin Yin. How nice. Everyone is here. Their eyes were red, and Grandma wanted to say not to cry, to be happy, that they would meet again, but her body was too heavy, and she could only helplessly give up. Lu Zhou quickly took out the T-34 and gave Grandma a breath of life, then took out a cold storage device to place her inside. As he closed the hatch, Lu Zhou thought to himself, "Wait for us. We will meet you soon." Everyone snapped back to reality from their grief, unsure of what to say to each other. Lu Zhou thought about the only absent member of their team, the Gao family, and perhaps he would have to personally search for their whereabouts in the future. Epilogue. The nuclear radiation on the surface was completely purified 5 years later, and humanity spent another 10 years rebuilding the surface, successfully transitioning from underground cities to surface living. The world situation underwent a significant reshuffle, and Huagua had become the most powerful country. Surrounding nations had to watch how Huagua lived. Lu Zhou was no longer young, but he could clearly feel that he had no fatigue in his body. Perhaps he would continue to live on alongside the spaceship. He also didn't look for a girlfriend, as he decided to focus on building the country, if only to make life a bit more comfortable for his family. He hoped that when his family departed, the world would be as beautiful as it once was. The end.